What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Long Run Podcast. This is Adam, and I'm joined by some of my favorite people in the entire world, including someone making their podcast debut, but we'll talk about
Yeah.
that in a little bit. Today, we're going to be talking about a show that's the latest installment in the MCU starring an Avenger who doesn't quite get the spotlight he might deserve. But before we talk about that show, we're going to introduce our guests. Back at it again, straight from the Arcane review, it is Donovan, the man who is now a senior production coordinator on Valorant at Riot Games. How are you doing today, man?
Vibing. I'm here. I'm ready to talk about Clint, my boy. Let's get it.
Hell yeah. And next to him is Gabe making his podcast debut. A man I go way, way back with. This man was actually a fan who has now come onto the podcast. He's a doctor who actually listened to the podcast while he was helping someone give birth. That's how hardcore of a fan this man is. How are you doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm really excited. Hawkeye's my favorite Avenger, so I got a lot to say.
Ooh, okay.
Let's
All right.
go.
All right.
Wow. Okay, this is a pro Hawkeye review.
And last but certainly not least, it is Ethan.
Last and least.
Well, no. Come on. You're the most famous fan of this
Definitely
group.
not.
And we haven't seen him since Dune.
That's right.
And Ethan's actually the person who recommended I read the comic book run that this is based on all the way back in high school. Okay, so Ethan in 2012. Okay, so Ethan is a hardcore fan, just like Gabe. But of course, we already mentioned that we're going to be talking about Hawkeye today. We're going to be talking about Hawkeye, the TV series, starring Jeremy Renner. It is the last MCU Disney Plus series to come out in 2021. I almost said 2022. I can't get my time right. And we're going to be going full spoiler, review and discussion of this show that seems to overall have some good reception, but there are some people who have some problems with it. But we'll get all into that. But before we even talk about Hawkeye, the show, right? I think it's important that we set up some of the fandom that we've already talked about before. So, how do you all feel about Hawkeye as a character? How do you feel about MCU Phase 4? And I suppose the Hawkeye kind of series at the end there. We'll talk about that last. So, Hawkeye as a character. I know Gabe, he's your favorite. Why is he your favorite?
So, I think what I like about Hawkeye is he's really like the everyman, which I think the series kind of explores really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
He's just a normal dude with a bow and arrow.
Right.
He doesn't have any powers. He doesn't really have he didn't have any movies or anything prior to this. He was just kind of some dude, and I think he gets overshadowed quite a bit in pretty much everything he's in. But kind of like another character, Black Widow, he's kind of like the glue that holds the whole team together, and I really, really like that about him. I like it. So that's one of the reasons. I guess I'll go into it a little bit more during the podcast, but he's definitely my favorite for that reason.
Okay. I respect it. How about you, Ethan? How do you feel about Hawkeye?
Oh, well, the thing with Hawkeye is no matter what, it never gets old seeing an arrow hit a target really far away. Oh, wow, that's just so satisfying. But no, like Gabe said, he is just when you have literal gods kind of flying around in the MCU, it is nice to see the street level guys who have to kind of be a bit more tactical with how they approach situations.
Right.
And Clint, he's just funny. I like his sarcasm, and yeah, he's just a great addition to the Avengers cast. It's too bad that he's the only one left.
Wait a second, Ethan. Donovan, how about you, man? How you feel about Hawkeye?
Dude, my boy Hawkeye, he's a family man. He's out here vibing. He's just trying, like Ethan said, he's just shooting targets, okay? That's all he's got to do. And he's really fucking good at it. And I respect that. Tony Stark, he got tech, okay? Hulk, anger problems. Hawkeye, he's got a family. He's got a very specific skill set. And he's got some good banter. What more could you want?
Absolutely. I think Hawkeye is definitely someone who is the glue, like we've all said. I like Hawkeye in the MCU for sure. Certainly not someone who's gotten the spotlight a lot, but he's also had his little moments, like Ethan was saying, He's certainly the normal guy. I remember in Avengers: Age of Ultron when he's trying to like calm down Quicksilver. He's like, "Bro, listen to me, okay? I'm just a guy with a bow and arrow. We're fighting. There's a god on our team, and I'm fighting against killer robots. Okay, none of this makes sense, sort of thing." So he's certainly in on the joke kind of thing, and I think that adds a lot to the character. And then we've seen him go through a lot as well in becoming Ronin because of the death of his family because of the blip, and subsequently his redemption in Avengers Endgame, and that's something that's talked about in this series for sure. So Hawkeye, I think we can say safely that we're all pretty big fans of Hawkeye. Now, on the other hand, though, MCU Phase 4, especially with Eternals, right, there's been a bit of a mixed kind of reception to Phase 4 overall. So for all of you, how are you all feeling about MCU Phase 4 so far?
So Phase 4 is everything like sort of post Endgame, basically.
Post No Way Home, yeah. Or post Far From Home. Excuse me, sorry.
Far From Home. I see.
Yeah.
So this would include things like Shang-Chi.
Yes,
correct. A lot of the Marvel series. I see.
Correct.
I think, to me, like there hasn't been like a high point yet, but like nothing's been bad really. Like they're sort of just like it's a lot like Phase 1 was really, where it's just sort of setting things up. So I'm interested so far to see where it goes.
Okay.
We had a high point come out in December.
Ethan has not seen it. I don't think you have, right? You haven't seen No Way Home?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I have not. You're right.
Yeah, no, don't spoil it for Ethan. Do not spoil it for Ethan.
Spoilers. Okay.
I mean, I kind of already know some of it, but yeah, I heard it was very good.
No Way Home is definitely the highlight of Phase 4. But go ahead, Gabe. How are you feeling about Phase 4?
I am very much enjoying it so far. I think it's, everything up to this point has been like one huge story. We're building across like all this different stuff happening, like everything led up to Thanos, and they tried to sprinkle in these like little stories of the characters, like we had Ant-Man or Guardians of the Galaxy, which I think was cool telling stories, but in the grand scheme of things, everything was leading up to Avengers, Infinity War, Endgame, and like all that sort of stuff. And so like I feel like so far Phase 4 has been really nice of just like, let's explore these characters, what makes them tick, how do they interact with each other in the world, what are the dynamics, and I've enjoyed it. I agree up until like most recent Spider-Man, no spoilers, there hasn't been like a huge high point, but I would say at the same time there's definitely been no low points for me either, so I've just been really happy with everything overall.
Okay. And Gabe, for you,
so
I know we spoke in the car fairly recently, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I think this Phase 4 is really interesting. Actually, it's post Endgame, as we all know, but I think two of the factors that we should really talk about is first the pandemic, which not only elongated Phase 4, but kind of changed everything around too.
Right.
And I think that speaks for itself. But I think the second thing we should talk about is the TV series are now kind of canon now, which before it was only the movies. Right. And I guess this kind of ties into pandemic, but like a lot of the required Marvel stuff is now on TV, which opens up a whole new audience and a different like experience in general, which I think is really, really interesting. It seems like the TV shows, they're a lot more experimental as opposed from the movies, the quote unquote, like Marvel formula. I think the TV shows really deviate from that, and I think that's really, really interesting. But I think what everyone's been saying, there hasn't really been a high point, but I think there's a lot of interesting things that they're trying to do and work with. And some of it's sticking, and I think some of it isn't. And I think that's kind of obvious with like how they're proceeding as well. I guess we can talk about being a little meta here, but there's a lot of series that are greenlit, and a lot of like things that aren't being greenlit. I don't know if you noticed that. For example, like WandaVision, they're now doing an Agatha Harkness TV show. I don't know if that was ever in the cards. I don't know if that was always planned, but she was a standout character in there, and now she has her own TV show. So I don't know. It's very interesting because all of it's canon and all kind of relates to each other. And I think it's kind of an exciting time because it's exploring all these different nooks and crannies of the Marvel universe that, you know, now that the big Thanos thing is over, they're kind of exploring. I think it's cool.
That is an interesting point, actually, because it's interesting that you bring up how it's all canon, because like I'm thinking now, like, because like when you have just like mainline movies, I feel like it's easy to keep like everything sort of canon and like up to snuff and like keep all the plot threads together. But it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see how they move forward with all these TV shows with like all their various stories and like all these characters, like how they're gonna manage to keep track of everything as they go forward.
Yeah, for sure. Especially now too, when it's like not just everything that's coming out now, but all the stuff in the past, like obviously, and we'll get to it. Like Kingpin's back. What does that mean for Matt Murdock, Jessica Jones, like all these other
Luke
Netflix
Cage.
characters? Like, will they come back too? And what does that mean? What does that look like? But I also think that the thing that you pointed out, Gabe, that I really think was insane too is the pandemic, right? Like looking back to when they first announced Phase 4, like it was completely different. Like I'm pretty sure like Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was supposed to come out like last year in May,
Right.
And then like they probably had to do a ton of different stuff. Spider-Man came up before that. Now we have a ton of different Marvel shows that came up before then. So they've not only like had to adjust on the fly based on what people like. So we have like an Agatha Harkness show now, but they've also had to just pivot to be like, well, now that this is coming first, what does that mean? What do we have to change? Like, how does the dynamic of everything shift? And then, obviously as well, like Chadwick Boseman passing, like how do we handle that Black Panther movie? There's so many things that they've had to account for.
So many curveballs,
Yeah, in Phase 4, and that's insane. I think they've done a really good job so far, despite all of it.
Yeah, from what I hear too, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the original plotline of that show was supposed to be there's a global pandemic, and as soon as the global pandemic, they're like, we can't do that. We gotta pivot real quick, real quick.
May not be in good taste.
Yeah. So the Phase 4 has definitely been really interesting, and certainly, like I said before, I think Spider-Man: No Way Home has been the high point. But I also agree with what many of you have said in that there hasn't been any low points, but it is a lot of setup. I would say, and we'll talk about this during the review of Hawkeye, the series, but I think one of the big things I've noticed about Phase 4, especially, is that there's a very, very prevalent theme of like grief and how you get over grief, right? We see that in WandaVision. We see that in Shang-Chi. We see that even in the Falcon and the Winter Soldier in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of just like, how do you get over loss sort of thing. And we're even seeing it in this series. So it's certainly, there's a lot of more character work because we're seeing all these shows, but also because the movies were so few and far between because of the pandemic. I think even now the movies are becoming events in themselves, like, which is crazy to say because Marvel movies were already events, but now it's like, oh my God, like I might not go to the theater that often now, but if it's a Marvel movie, I might make that trek out there just because I'm so invested in the characters already. And finally, before we get to the actual Hawkeye show, 3 out of the 4 of us, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, Donovan, you can say something, but have actually read the original comic book run that this series is heavily inspired by. It's a 2012 Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction, David Aja, Matt Hollingsworth, and Chris Eliopoulos. I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but
it's a big name.
Yeah, it's widely considered one of the absolute greatest, like, not only runs of the last decade, but really the last of just like comics in general. It's certainly the definitive Hawkeye run, for sure. But Ethan, you were the first person who really brought me onto this. So how did you feel about that run?
About that original run? Well, I think like a lot of people, that kind of caught me by surprise, right? Because because back in the day, like I don't think I searched it out. I think I literally probably bought a couple issues from a comic book shop. Imagine that back in those days.
Right.
But yeah, it was very striking immediately, the like visual style that Aja had developed for Hawkeye, which has really followed him like heavily into the show. And yeah, like the witty banter and like all of it was almost like it came at a perfect time when the MCU was really sort of starting to catch its like stride.
Yeah,
and I think people were probably checking out comics more and more. So it was definitely like a great run to come out at that time, and I think like you said, it stands the test of time very well.
Oh yeah, and Gabe, you were someone that also read it, but I don't know if I think you said you read it a little bit later on, right? Like, how'd you feel about the series?
Yeah, I did. It was actually one of the things that was recommended to me. I forget by who. Like, I think it was online. It was like, oh, top comics, read Matt Fraction, and I looked into it and I liked it a lot. I binged it all online. one day, and like it's a very like interesting and memorable comic, I think, because it's a very grounded, great art style, great humor, my kind of humor.
Right.
Still very interesting, a nice character piece on Clint Barton.
Yeah. And obviously this isn't a review on that series, but certainly we'll talk a lot about how that series inspired this show, because it wears its kind of inspirations on its sleeve, really. But I only recently read the comic. I actually read it in anticipation of this show and watching this show. And I agree. I think it's a great comic book run. I don't know if I would call it like the greatest comic book I've ever read or something like that, but it's certainly very, very good. And it's very, very memorable. The art is up there. And at the same time as well, like it's one of those comic books, like so often when we think about reading comic books, we think of like the really big events like the Infinity Gauntlet or Crisis on Infinite Earths that like completely shattered the universe and everything's not the same anymore. But the Hawkeye run is really just very, very grounded, self-contained. You don't have to worry about continuity or anything. And that's part of what makes it so great. And that's, I think, part of what makes this series so great. So Hawkeye, right? This is a TV show that stars our Archer from the MCU. And we've gotten a little bit of a glimpse of Hawkeye in past movies, but really this is the first time we're really highlighting him as a character and really centering on him. And going through the series, especially watching episode 1 when he's at the musical, your boy has kind of gone through it. Okay, you could tell this man is dealing with a lot, right? He sees this musical, right, of this horrific battle where the aliens invaded Earth that he was a part of. Yeah, and they're like just like frolicking about, and you could also tell too that he's definitely dealing with the death of Black Widow, right, from Avengers Endgame, right? Because when the stage character of Black Widow comes on, he like takes out his hearing aid and just like completely goes deaf, right? Like your boy's healed it. It gets so bad that he's like in the middle of a show, right? He's in the middle of the seat at a New York City play. He's like, yo, I gotta go to the bathroom. So he goes through everyone in the row, right, and goes to pee. It's like, damn, man, he was really going through it.
I hate having to get up in the middle of the row.
Bro, Ant-Man wasn't even there. What the fuck, dude?
But we know he could have been really tiny. He was tiny the whole time.
Yeah.
Oh shit, maybe he was.
He was actually in every movie.
We just didn't know it. Oh man.
I love that scene. It was so funny because I could totally see like if something like that actually happened, I could totally see that happening.
Yeah.
It was a great opener for sure.
Yeah.
It's a great opener, and I think it kind of shows what I think are the biggest strengths of the show is that it keeps things lighthearted, because actually if you watch like the play, there's even like a post-credit scene of the play playing out. It's actually hilarious if you watch it. But it's hilarious, but they also do a great job of kind of balancing the true character work, right, between Clint, whether it be Kate or everyone else, right? Because there is a lot of character work in this show, but they balance it a lot with some really, really good humor that again takes from the Matt Fraction, David Aja comic book run, which is also has some really, really good character work, but also kept it light the entire time and made sure that you were laughing at the same time. But yeah, man, the Hawkeye has certainly gone through it. But at the same time, the show, the show is called Hawkeye, it's not just about Jeremy Renner. It's also about Haley Steinfeld playing Kate Bishop, who goes on to take on the mantle of Hawkeye from the comics. They both share it. And she's given an intro as well, a really, really nice intro, both for her backstory, but also in the kind of the modern age. How did you all feel about Kate and I suppose Haley Steinfeld's kind of performance as we kind of go through this series?
That's a big question, Adam.
And that's why I asked it, Ethan.
Well, I mean, just to start it off, I would say that I liked Haley a lot in the show. I think she did a very good job. She definitely like had that sense of humor that I think Kate Bishop sort of needs to have to play off of Clint. And I thought her intro scene in the her intro scene kind of made me, like the intro scene, like it was really good, but there are moments of it that made me kind of laugh, because in her intro scene we see the attack on New York,
right, from like the Avengers 2012 movie.
From the original movie, and it's like, which I just that aspect in particular I do like the sort of world building of Marvel at this point, where they can just show New York being attacked by aliens and we're like, oh, I know what that is. Like I do kind of like that. But it's funny because she sees basically like her house gets destroyed, her dad gets killed, and she sees Clint fighting aliens, which inspires her to be Hawkeye. And I I just found it funny because like it's obviously they didn't have that much time to get into it, but they just sort of said like because she's at the funeral for her father and she says something like I need a bow, and I was like, okay, I guess you do. Like, yeah, those are my initial thoughts on her.
Yeah, I overall enjoyed her character a lot in the show. I also kind of agree there were some moments of the intro of her. I also thought like her at the boarding school was kind of like meh, like I wasn't really interested during those aspects. But as time got on, like I very much fell in love with her character. I think like Haley Steinfeld in general just did such a good job of like in every scene she just I can't I don't know the right word for it, but all I could think of is just like she felt so organic, like in her interactions with everyone, whether it was her mom, whether it was Jack, whether it was Clint. And I thought that was just really cool because it made me she made me kind of forget at times that I was watching a show, and it felt like I was just watching like I don't know what it was, but it just felt more real and organic, and I thought that she just brought a lot to that character. um she was definitely the star of the show for me. Even though I did love Clint a lot in this show as
Yes,
well.
same. What about you, Gabe?
Yeah, I 100% agree. Actually, I think Haley Steinfeld was like the perfect person for this role. I'm gonna be honest. Like, I think she played like if I pictured an actress to play Kate Bishop the comic wise, I think she played it really good. Her comedic timing was pretty good. She like fits the role really well, and kind of like what you were saying, Don, earlier that you know I was kind of ho hum on her, but then she kind of warmed up on her on as the time went on. I think that's kind of big. Um, and it seems like from what I'm talking with other people, it seems to be like the trend. Like you know, she seems to be one of the standout stars of this whole series. And I think that says a lot because I feel like Hawkeye is one of those characters that a lot of people aren't really pumped about, you know,
Yeah,
or no one's like, oh yeah, Hawkeye's my favorite character, or he's not like he's not like Iron Man, he's not like Thor or like Captain
right.
America. People are just like, oh yeah, Hawkeye. They kind of make fun of him. He's a guy with the bow and arrow, right? But
Yeah.
like, and to have Haley Steinfeld come along, be a sidekick essentially to Hawkeye, you're kind of like kind of fighting, you know, above your weight class a little bit. Like you're kind of fighting from behind a little bit for people to like you as it is, you know. And by the end, like I feel by the time the series wraps up, I feel like everyone like acclaim people really like Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop and did it play the role really well. So I think that says a lot for her.
Yeah, man, it really does. I think the biggest thing that you can say about Haley Steinfeld, who apparently was the only person offered the role, so it kind of goes to what Gabe said. I'm sure Marvel thought that, like, yep, she's perfect. We want her, sort of thing. I think it says a lot about her that she's able to hold her own against someone like Jeremy Renner, who's nominated for an Oscar, right? And it's not like Haley Steinfeld's any slouch, right? Like she made her probably her first big role was in True Grit way back when in the 2010s.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. But she's certainly made a name for herself, whether it be in voicing a character in Arcane or even being a part of the Bumblebee movie, which is apparently the best Transformers movie. But regardless, what I'm trying to say though is that it's really hard to come in and one get into the MCU, which is basically playing in this huge sandbox, but also go toe to toe with all these really well known and well or critically acclaimed actors. But she certainly did, and I think the biggest thing for Haley, and I should say Kate and Clint, is that both of them need each other in this series, and it kind of goes through that, right? Like without each other, they don't go through their arcs in this series. And I'm with all of you, and that I actually thought like Kate was a little like stuck up and kind of what's the word, like I don't want to say like she was in her ivory tower in the beginning, right? This is clearly someone who doesn't know what it's like to like really go through a lot of stuff, sort of thing. But it's because of the relationship that she has with Clint that she grows and becomes a lot more likable. The same thing with Clint is that he also grows and kind of gets out of his own shell. And by the end of the series, I actually think that like Katie's right up there with like Shang-Chi as well as like Peter as like one of the most likable characters like in the MCU. Like she really does earn it and kind of go through that arc. And it was an amazing to kind of see. But I guess in that way, right, this first episode, so much of it is about setting up Kate. So how did you all feel about like all the backstory that kind of goes with her, and kind of those first like introduction scenes in this first episode.
I was with it. I think the first episode for me was definitely the weakest. Like I remember messaging you out and being like, "Man, this show's kind of like I don't know. Like the play hit me the wrong way. Like it didn't have the impact that I wanted. I think like what other people were saying, like it was very real. Like I was like, man, that pissed me. Ant-Man wasn't even fucking there. They said Hawkeye has a really nice smile or something as like his dude. And then like when the Hulk dude was like smash, 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 I was like, get me out. Like I'm out of here. Like
You were
I'm
just
about to
like
fall
Clint.
asleep.
Yeah.
I was pissed. I thought like leading up to the auction was cool. I thought Arnon, whatever his name is, like that murder, I didn't even care. I was like, bro, I don't even know who this character is. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
His name was on like a little piece of candy. Like, who fucking cares, bro? Just like go home. Like, why are we even here? So there was just like, it was definitely a hard episode for me to get into, and I was sticking through it because like I thought everything going on with Clint was at least interesting. Like him with his family and just like he's just trying to have a good Christmas with his like family and they're like there and I'm just like okay, like I respect that, like love that for you. So he was really what held me in on the first episode. Otherwise I think I would have just said forget about it and I would have forgotten to watch the series.
Mm-hmm.
Hot take. Ethan, what about you? How'd you feel about it? Were you on the same boat as Donovan here?
I was similar, but not. I definitely like this was definitely like a not like a dud of a first episode, but like I wasn't like gripped to my seat, ready for the next episode. You know what I mean?
Right.
There were like little bits, and because like the first episode was mostly like for me a game of like, okay, let's see how much this show is like the comic. I was like, okay, let me spot all the little things, and like there's actually like immediately in the first episode, like there's already like lots and lots of little things that they were doing. Like her saving the dog, for instance, it's her saving pizza dog as they call them for most of the show, but I think they actually settled on the name Lucky.
Yeah,
she saves him from a car. It's funny because that moment told me kind of like the tone difference, because in the comic Lucky gets hit by the car. he lives. But he gets hit. Like the comic starts with him getting hit by the car.
Lucky, no.
But in the show, she saves him while wearing the Ronin outfit, and everyone like clips it and puts it online.
Right.
But so that kind of told me that this show was going to be like, I think, a bit lighter, a bit more fun than I think the original comic run, which was interesting.
Right.
And other than that, like I just thought like lots of the little world building things again were interesting. Like I want to the thing that one of the things that was interesting was the fucking Thanos was right on the on the urinal.
Yeah.
God, that was incredible.
Like because of course, right? Like of course, like there'd be some toxic ass dude who's like, "Yo, Thanos was right."
in the boys' bathroom. There's some
of course. But yeah, other than that, like I wasn't super into Armand. Like rest in peace. He didn't even make it to the end of the first episode.
Yeah, with peace and love.
Peace and love. But yeah, the auction, like I was having trouble like paying attention to the auction because I was like, what are they buying? Like what's going on? Like because I was still trying to figure out like who's our villain, like what's going on. But yeah, other than that, it was mostly just like it was nice to see her I forget her name, Haley. It was nice to see Haley's take on the character at the start. Other than that, like yeah, it was an okay first episode.
How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, first episode was okay. You know, like I like the humor of it. I think that's the thing that stuck out to me. Like the fact that they did a whole play on it is kind of funny. Just some of like the witty one-liners and stuff like that. It's just like okay, like it wasn't like sold though. It wasn't like there wasn't any like gripping action scene. Like even the murder, I was like okay. I actually thought it was gonna be like a murder mystery kind of deal with that whole thing. Yeah, and I guess we'll talk about like how it kind of is, but it isn't.
Yeah,
a little bit. It kind of strays away from that, which I thought was interesting. But yeah, I mean, it was okay first episode. It definitely like got me to watch the second one at least.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that we're all saying that because I agree. I think episode 1 was not that strong, and I wonder if Marvel knew that, and that's why they had the 2-episode premiere instead of just like their usual 1 episode per week. So that's probably into it. One thing I did want to say is that I agree with all of you that the Clint stuff was definitely the most interesting. I love that scene now that Ethan mentioned, like when he was at the urinal, he saw Thanos is right, and there was that dude next to him who was like, "Wait, you're a superhero," and he's like,
Oh,
"Yeah."
yeah.
And he was like, "Can I get a picture?" And he was like, "Now's not the time, bro." Like Clint is literally midstream, bro, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Yo,
You know what? It was interesting though seeing how Clint is treated in New York because he also gets that free dinner at the Chinese place. And like, it's interesting how people are like, he's like there's a lot of reverence towards him, which is interesting, which he seems like uncomfortable with,
Yes.
actually, for most of it.
Yes, and I think so much of the show is actually Clint coming to grips with the fact that he is a hero, right? And there's like a lot of complicated feelings there, whether it be because he wants to protect his family,
like a survivor's guilt,
exactly, whether it be because of what happened with Natasha, or also whether it be about his past of like being a killer, whether it be as Ronin or before he became an Avenger, sort of thing. So it's certainly very, very interesting. But yeah, I think we're all in agreement. Episode 1 was kind of. So we get to episode 2. Clint rescues Kate because she's getting attacked by the tracksuit mafia. I just want to say I'm so happy that the tracksuit mafia all say "bro" like in the comics. It's hilarious. It's so good.
Yeah, they have this. It's like a suffix they put on the end of every sentence.
Yeah, bro.
It kind of gives them like some character, you know. Like, I'll always remember like the tracksuit mafia versus like some random Goonies, you know. Just and it helps them stand out as like their own character. You know,
they fit very well in the MCU because they're like intimidating when they need to be, but they're also like mostly funny. You know what I mean, with the constant bros and stuff.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And so we see that well, I guess the inciting incident we forgot to mention, right, is because Clint feels compelled to rescue Kate because Kate is wearing the Ronin suit because she had to wear that to save everyone during the auction scene, and there's this whole like kidnapping or like they wanted the watch from Avengers compound, something like that. And so basically Clint didn't know that the Ronin suit was out there, and he wants to make sure the Ronin suit is like burned and that it doesn't lead to more like consequences because of what he did while he was Ronin, sort of thing. And so basically he takes it back to Kate's apartment. I just want to say, you know that Kate is rich because that apartment in New York is fucking gigantic. Okay, like you have no idea how expensive that kind of like apartment is, bro.
That's 6
it was like a studio
week,
set,
bro.
Yeah,
that shit was insane.
Like her
bro,
family
she had an
has a house,
archery
but she has her own
range.
apartment.
Yeah, right.
Like what?
Yeah.
Like, what?
It was pretty insane. But anyway, so the tracksuit mafia come in and they throw Molotov cocktails, which is also pretty funny too, because they're like, "Yo, bro, come and take us," sort of thing, take us on or whatever. So again, it just establishes them as pretty memorable antagonists, even if they're not particularly threatening. But I guess like really what it comes down to is, right, they kind of escape, and then there's already a dynamic that we're seeing between Clint and Kate, where Kate is obsessed with Clint, right, for the reasons that we already mentioned before. And this is where we slowly start to see it's basically like a buddy cop film, right, where it's like there's a straight man and this person who's always like cracking jokes and like trying to say things. But honestly, like for me, I felt like the chemistry between the two was there right away, and I think that's what really carries the show. But how'd you all feel, I guess, about this first interaction between both Hawkeyes?
I actually really liked it a lot. Just to go circle back into like the whole like bombing of her apartment, right?
Yeah.
You kind of see like how Kate kind of becomes better as like an archer and a fighter as the series goes on. Like I don't know if there's a scene where like she's on fire and Clint's like, "Hey, go get the fire extinguisher," and she shoots an arrow into the fire extinguisher, and the fire extinguisher like bounces into the toxic mafia instead of like going, and she's like, "Oh shit," you know, like that was kind of funny. Like she's not like a top archer right away, you know. Right. She still definitely has some growth, and like you're right with like, you know, she's kind of like obsessed. He's like, "Oh, can you sign my bow?" Like what? You know, like can you sign? Can you just sign it? And she's like, "Oh man, like Hawkeye's my place." Like a total fangirling. That was kind of funny. But yeah, I think the chemistry is like there, like total. It reminds me of like Die Hard. This whole kind of series has a very Die Hard kind of vibe to me. Like it takes parts. Like
it's Christmas. Also Christmas. You're right.
Yeah, so. Exactly. Yeah. Like there's like a hardened action hero, you know.
Yeah.
Kind of like, oh, I gotta do this shit, you know. I kind of like Die Hard a little bit. It was very like cozy. Like it has very cozy vibes. I like.
Oh
it.
yeah, definitely very
For their
crazy.
relationship, you know.
Interesting.
Donovan, Ethan. Oh, go ahead, Ethan. Go ahead, Ethan.
Go, Ethan. You go.
Okay. For me, I was gonna agree mostly with Gabe. I think it like I think the relationship worked very well, because like Gabe was saying, it's a at the start anyway, it's like a fan, so like celebrity sort of relationship where she's such she's like, wow, this is literally my idol that I'm meeting and working with. So she's just sort of so excited to see everything, which is I guess a good audience surrogate and everything. We're like, oh man, we get to hang out with Hawkeye, we get to do all this cool stuff, which I think really balances well with Clint's cynicism at that point in the story.
Right.
And I think it's interesting as well to contrast it to the comic run, because in this, in the comic, Kate is basically equal with Hawkeye at that point. She's very much come on, Clint, get out of here, do your shit, let's do this. But here, she's such a big fan that it's the jokes are more about her being green and novice and stuff like that, which I think it fit very well for an MCU show, because I think they're constantly trying to make sure that the audience, because they know that there's so much going on, it's so hard for a new viewer, that I think they definitely want characters like Kate Bishop to be kind of a good intro for a lot of people.
That's actually really a good way to talk about it. I didn't even think about that. That in some ways, Kate is the audience insert, not only as a fan, but also as someone who's new to the world.
Sure, yeah.
And so it's definitely, certainly a device that they use really, really well. I'm glad you pointed that out. What were you going to say, though, Donovan?
I mean, pretty much just agreeing with everything that's been said so far. I think that their dynamic is super, super strong. I think for me too, I enjoyed seeing her fangirl a lot over Hawkeye, because and I know why they did this, but in all the scenes that would happen where they're walking around, it's oh my god, this is a superhero, I want to go take a picture of this fucking Katniss Everdeen. I was just bro, this is Clint, this is Hawkeye, dude. He's he's not Hulk, he's not big green, he's not Iron Man, but he's still cool. And no one gave him love, and I felt her doing that. I was I would be acting that way too if I saw Hawkeye. Hawkeye's not even my favorite superhero, but he's still really fucking cool. So I just it just made me resonate with her a lot, especially because everyone's just always constantly giving Clint shit for no reason. But yeah, I think that their dynamic was awesome, and as we'll kind of talk about later, his lessons for her were just as impactful as her lessons for him. And I think that that's always really important in these buddy cop type of situations.
Right. I did. I'm glad you brought that up though, because it's so funny that that's actually literally what it's like in Times Square in New York. There are always superheroes there. They're not Chris Evans or whatever, just people dressed up in costumes. It was wow, they definitely know what it's like in New York. That's for sure. I think that was a really nice nod and a good bit of comedy, but that does play into kind of the character work that we're talking about before. And I think so. This is something that you pointed out, Ethan, where Clint is reluctant to for all of his accomplishments, he is reluctant to take on the hero worship and that sort of thing, right? He doesn't want to be seen. He just wants that. My man is just trying to get his shit done and go to his family. He is.
It's Christmas, right?
It's Christmas. He lost his family during the blip. He don't want to miss making gingerbread houses. Okay.
I still can't believe they call it the blip. I don't know the blip. I guess they can't call it the snap because I guess they don't know that it was a snap. But the blip, and it never caught on with me. The blip.
Okay. Well, we can call it the snap for this podcast if you want, Ethan.
No, man, this is a pro snap podcast.
Oh yeah. We don't call it the blip here.
The blip.
Right, so he drops her off at work, and we come to find out that Kate's mom is this head of super security firm or whatever, right? But then we get this really, really fun scene where Clint has to go get the Ronin costume because he finds out it was taken by someone from the fire department of New York, and it turns out that they're big on LARPing, right? So he has to go to this LARP fest in Central Park. And honestly, this is one of the funniest scenes in the entire show. I was cracking up during this.
It's a great setup, right? Him having to go into this medieval world. It's great to look at. Yeah.
And it kind of goes on what it kind of goes on what Donovan was saying, where or where Ethan, where it was just like he's so cynical, but that was what makes the scene so funny is because he's so cynical, but still mowing down these people. Like it was pretty funny. But like what you all think of Clint and his LARPing adventure?
He reminds me of like like a video game. You go back into like the low level areas and you start like one shotting people.
Yeah.
Oh my god!
Like I gotta go through these shelves. Like I fought Thanos. He's like, bro, I fought the
Thanos. Game boss.
He's like fighting all these guys in like make believe suits and shit. I thought that was hilarious, dude. I thought like the humor was like on point. I was like, this is pretty funny.
Yeah, that whole segment, for the first minute of it, I was very tilted. I was like, this is a waste of time. Why are we doing this? And then once everything started happening, I was like, this is fantastic. I'm so glad that we just get to see him. Like, they're just running at him, and then he just like fucking whaps him on the side. He's like, get out of my way, bro. Like, I'm sick of this shit. I'm trying to get to my kids, man. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
He wasn't having it. I loved it. It was so fucking funny.
Yeah, I definitely didn't go into the Hawkeye series saying like, you know what, I really need to see Hawkeye as a LARPer. It's not something I knew I wanted, but I've seen it. I was like, yep, I definitely did want it. You read my mind. You knew what I wanted without me knowing it. It was really good, and I think I think it was good in the sense it continues to show that he's seen as a hero, even by what many would consider heroic public servants and different police officers and fire department members in New York, especially New York's strongest, New York's bravest, that sort of thing, or New York's finest, excuse me. So I think it was cool to see that. It was also really funny too when like they had their one-on-one fight, and he was like, "Bro, you gotta sell it. Like, come on. Like, I can't just stab you."
I do kind of wish that like Grills was like a better fighter, so that he could have a better fight with him at the end there. But like, I think it was also a good scene for setting up those like secondary characters, right?
Yeah.
Because they come back a lot, and they're a good comic relief, and they become important later on. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad that they actually got brought back. One, because like it's really easy if that was just that one scene, it would be easy to be like, oh yeah, LARPing's so lame, that sort of thing. Like they were just making fun of LARPers the entire time. But I feel like they added a lot more depth to them later on in the series. So I was happy about that. Yeah. And so also I just want to point out, Clint, dressed like a true New Yorker, has a jacket on, everything, also has a backpack. True New Yorker fit right there. He knows where he is. But while all this is happening, right, Kate is like really suspicious about Jack, who we get introduced to as the fiance of his mom, everything like that. And so like they have this fencing fight because Kate is convinced that if they fence, that she'll find out something, that it'll expose Jack and his true intentions, that sort of thing. And this also goes to show kind of what we were saying before in that intro sequence. Not only do we find out that Kate was inspired to do archery, but she like became a champion in like literally everything: martial arts, fencing, grappling, like you name it, she got really good at it. So it was a good way to kind of show that as well. So how both of you, or excuse me, all of you, feel about that Kate versus Jack fencing scene?
He was smurfing. Jack was smurfing. It was funny, but yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, as someone who had no idea about anything about Jack as a character going into this show, I actually hated his character up until the very end, because I was like, this is the most fucking bullshit, like obvious villain shit, and I guess that's what they were going for, but I just like it just felt so bad that I was just like, can you just walk in, fucking shoot him in the eye, and let's like move on with the show? Like, what's going on here? Like, why is he the most sus fucking person on planet Earth for no reason? Like, just calm down, bro. Like, take a fucking drink. Learn. He looked like he was pretending to be a human the whole time, and he was like an AI. Just trying to convince everyone, it's like, I am human. I love you, Kate's mom. Like, I can't wait to be good father. And it's like,
he had that smile the whole time.
Yeah, I was like, what is going on? Like, am I the only one seeing this? Like, what?
Am I crazy?
He was like Donovan, literally the mustache twirling, like
Yeah,
I was like, what is going on with this character? I was fucking furious.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you didn't like the part when he was just like, "Look, she's getting really defensive." I read that when I read the step parent book or something. It was like,
oh my god, bro! He literally started mansplaining what she was going through. I was like, "What are you talking about, bro? Shut the fuck up!" Bought the Ronin sword. He's just fucking chilling with it, staring at it. He pulls at the fence. He's like, "You're right. I lied. I did have some fencing."
Oh god,
Shut the fuck up, bro! Like, who are you? Who invited you? Pissed me off.
I can't believe Jack just straight up just took the Ronin sword for like almost no reason at the end. As we find out,
reason.
He was just like, "Damn, I'll take that." He's like, "Okay."
He just fucking yoinked it. Who is he?
Who is he indeed? Yeah, I don't fucking know.
Well, Gabe, they both said their piece. How do you feel about Jack? And not only in this scene, I suppose, by extension, the entire series.
Jack is whack.
I thought,
You
like,
heard it here first.
I thought he was really interesting because, like, I think that he was set up to be like the bad guy,
right?
From like scene one, right? It's like, oh, like who killed his uncle? Obviously him, but like it was one of those things where I was like, is this like so obvious? Is it one of those things where he's a red herring, or it's one of those things where it's so obvious that you don't think it's him? Because obviously, like we were saying, he's very sus, right? And we're like, huh, like is he actually the bad guy?
Yeah,
and like we don't want to think we're the bad guy, or like I don't know. I just thought he was a very like interesting red herring, like just something to keep my eyes on. Like I couldn't really get a good grasp of him up until the very end.
Yeah, Jack is 100% the guy. If you're playing Among Us, every single time it's about to vote someone, you're like, "We're killing Jack." It was him. Yeah. It was definitely him.
So sus.
It was way too.
Even if
sus.
it wasn't him, just fucking vote him off anyway, so he stops talking. Let's just like
talking every round. Yeah. I think part of the problem also is that like putting like such an obvious red herring like him like in the second episode, like because like the first episode we're already like, where's this show going? Like what's going on? We don't have like a ground yet, so we think like when we see Jack, we're like, is this really the fucking guy we're gonna have to deal with the rest of the show?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that kind of colors your expectation towards him. Where I think maybe if he had shown up maybe a little later, or the first episode had been stronger, maybe we would have been more patient with Jack.
Yeah, it's also a thing too where if you are a comic book fan, you recognize who that character is, which is Swordsman, who's literally like a D tier like Avenger. You're also being like, bro, like why is he even here? Like Swordsman's his power is literally like, I'm good with swords. Like that's it, right? And I'm like in the comics,
he's an Avenger.
Yes, in the comics, he's
like get cut ASAP.
In the comics, he's like Clint's mentor, and like he's the one who taught him how to like shoot arrows.
What? What? No fucking shot.
You don't understand how whack the actual origin of Hawkeye is in the comics.
Sucks, man. I hate this phase. Hawkeye's my low point now.
Right, and I don't want to get too much into it, but also like Jack is also like or I should say Swordsman's the star of like this one comic book arc called the Celestial Madonna Saga. It's so dumb. I'm not even going to talk about it.
With a name like that.
Yeah. But like the thing is like that's what he's most known for. So immediately if you're a comic book fan, you're just like, why is he here? What is the point? So I definitely agree with what Ethan was saying. Now, you know, at the end of this, right, we see Clint let himself get captured, which is hilarious, by the way. He's like, "Hey guys, I'm here." Like gets hit with a baseball. It's like, bro, that fucking hurt. Like, and again, it reminds you that he's just a normal guy, right? Like he's not like the Hulk, where like baseball bats like break as soon as they hit him or something. But so he lets himself get kidnapped, and I thought this was a really good way to end the episode, is where Kate like falls through the roof.
I found her, bro. I found her.
Yeah, I found her, bro. And like the entire time, so Clint's like, I have no idea who Kate is. Never met her before in my life. And like just falls through the roof. I thought it was definitely really humorous, and I thought it was a good way to kind of bring them all together. Yeah. Anything else anyone wants to say about episode 2?
I just kind of liked how like his whole getting captured to get information was kind of like Black Widow's in the first Avengers.
Yeah.
I thought it was kind of clever. And then like...
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. That's a really good callback.
It's like, oh, like, I'm going to fake getting captured so I can get all this information, see what you know, get him off his tail, and then, do what I need to do. I thought it was kind of funny. Like, it doesn't really nod to that, but like something I guess
Mm-hmm.
I just on my rewatch I noticed. I was like, oh, okay, like that's a little like tie into that, which I thought was really cool.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And there's lots of little Easter eggs I think in this show, for sure. So it's good that you pointed that one out. I didn't even think about it. So episode 3 opens with the backstory really for Echo or as we know her in the show, just Maya Lopez, right? And I actually really like this intro. One, I think it does a really really good job of setting up the character, and also her relationship with her father. We come to find out was murdered by Ronan, aka Hawkeye. But also in general, I'm just really happy to see the casting of Echo in this. The actress Alako Cox is actually a Native American deaf amputee. Like she's everything, right? Like they didn't actually CG in her prosthetic limb or anything like that.
Really, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
she actually is like not only is she Native American, she is deaf and she is an amputee. So I think that was a really really good call from them, and that's something that they did something similar in Eternals, right? Where though I forget her name, the one who has super speed is also someone who is deaf and communicates via sign language.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I didn't know anything about Echo. Honestly, this is the first time I was exposed to the character. But in general, how'd y'all feel about this intro?
I liked it. I think that the parts of her growing up after like the incident that happened where her father died, I thought was really cool because it's like that scene I think where she's like at the boxing area and like
Right.
someone's just like about to fight her and like thinks she kind of sucks and she just literally destroys him,
Right.
utterly decimates him, and I was like, this person's badass. I thought that was cool. Candidly though, which we can get into later, like when we
Yeah.
start to find out like that, her father died due to like people that betrayed her.
Yeah.
That part kind of like messed with her backstory a bit for me because I just always think that whole mindset of like it was so obvious once someone said it, it was like they were never there. It was a hit. And then she goes to the guy and she's like, why weren't you there that day? Like when it happened and he wasn't
Yeah,
there.
later
And
on.
it's like, you never asked this question. So that kind of like soured the backstory for me later
Sure.
on in the series. But when I first saw it, I thought it was kind of cool, like seeing her just like be badass and like, because she's so determined. So it was pretty okay for me.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that backstory is a good way to tie her into the show with it's a good way to tie in like the whole Ronin angle because as we see like like Clint was like blasting his way through the office as Ronin, and so she only remembers his outfit and she's trying to find him, which is why she wants to find Ronin so badly.
Mm.
And I thought it was definitely a very emotional backstory. I definitely really liked the performance with the child actor and the father.
Yes.
I thought was really good.
Yes.
I thought they really played it very well. Yeah. And no, I thought she was introduced very well. That's what I thought.
What about you, Gabe?
I kind of liked her. I mean, I liked that Marvel being more inclusionary, but I kind of liked Echo as a character. I think to be honest with you, originally I wasn't very like I was like, oh okay, like she was okay for me when I first watched through, but like rewatched it again, I was like, oh, I think she actually is like kind of like the perfect character for or kind of like perfect like villain, because she kind of like foils Kate in a way. They both grew up without their fathers,
Yes.
and they're both um, influenced by Clint.
Yes. Yes.
Kate being the good way, like be the Hawkeye, and Clint in his best ways, and
Right.
Echo or Maya, sorry, in like via Ronin in Clint's worst ways. So like they both grew up with a father, and they kind of like look to him, and Clint Hawkeye was the one who kind of influenced their life in both ways. So I thought it was an interesting foil for Kate. Because Kate grew up with everything. She's like has all these ideals, and like versus Maya, she grew up in the streets. She grew up with a dad. She's with all this crime. So kind of like the opposite. I thought it was a very interesting take. Just to see how really, even though as much Clint says, "Oh, I don't really do anything. I don't influence people." He's doing it right now. Even without him realizing it. I thought like originally I didn't really think it's like okay, like I didn't think she was that interesting of a character, but when I look back into it, like into the themes and stuff, I thought she like was actually kind of she really works for the series. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I'm really glad you pointed that out, and that's something that I noticed throughout the show too. So much of the show, why everything happens in the show, is because there are consequences of Clint's past, right? What he's done in the past has led to the actions that happen in the show. He's inspired Kate, and that's why Kate's come into his life. He's to what Gabe was saying. He killed Maya's father, and therefore that's why she's trying to get revenge and trying to hunt him down. And also at the same time as well, because of the sacrifice that Natasha did, he's framed as being the one person who killed him. That's why Yelena is coming after him, right? So much of the show is about spoiler warning. So much of the show is about like, this is what happened. How do you deal with the actions? Like, how do you deal with the fallout of what you do and that sort of thing? So yeah. I'm really glad that you pointed that out.
No, that is an interesting thing that Gabe pointed out, that Kate essentially is like Clint's Hawkeye side and Maya is essentially the Ronin side. Yeah. I think that's very interesting that they're like sort of diametrically opposed like that. Like, cause like it's like, but like the way you bring it up, it almost makes me like a little disappointed, because like in a lot of ways Maya, like she isn't really set up as Kate's villain. I feel like she's more set up like as another obstacle for Clint. I feel like she doesn't really have a conflict with Kate, or she doesn't really come butting heads with her,
right?
Which I think could have been really cool, but we never really get. But yeah, that's just some of my thoughts for later, maybe.
No, yeah, I agree with you in that way. She's certainly more of a attached to Clint, and not necessarily like something that opposes Kate in that way. Donovan, anything you want to say about this before we talk about this big action scene?
Oh God, no, not really. Just I appreciate the analogy that was brought up, because I actually didn't think of that, of like what we've been talking about for a bit. So I've just been kind of pondering that a lot, because I think that's a really cool thing that I just didn't even realize. But
right.
I don't have anything else to add.
Yeah, so they both get kidnapped, and I think this is actually a really funny scene that kind of endears the tracksuit mafia. They're like, "Oh, I'm bored. Turn on the machine again," and they're just like rocking back and forth on the like the little ride. I thought that was funny. And then I thought it was also really funny too when like Kay starts giving the one dude relationship advice. He's like, "I can't believe it, bro. Like I was going to take her to see Imagine Dragons," and she was like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." He was like, "I love Imagine Dragons." Like it was like I was cracking up. I won't lie.
Didn't she like not like Imagine Dragons or something like that?
What was that?
Didn't she not like Imagine Dragons?
Oh yeah, she didn't like Imagine Dragons, but the tracksuit guy did.
That one was like, yeah, Imagine Dragons catching like stray hits.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
You know.
Right. I think it also does a good job of, again, humanizing the tracksuit mafia, even though they are antagonists. Like, there's that one point where, like, she stops, like, the ride stops. And the guy's like, "All right, I'm bored. Let's go play cards over there." Like, it's like, they're literally just sitting in the room doing nothing.
They've got time to kill.
They definitely got some time to kill. But this is where we actually get introduced to Maya in her modern incarnation. But also we see the lieutenant, or whatever you want to call him, Kazi. And this is really the first big action sequence in the series, and also it's very, very clearly inspired by the comic. It's like ripped almost straight out of the comic in a lot of ways. So I guess just to start off with, Ethan, as someone who read the comic first, like how'd you feel about how it was adapted but also changed in certain ways?
Well, the first half of this action sequence, like I have this thing in my head that I call Marvel Foo, where like whenever they start doing hand-to-hand combat, like I kind of zone out a little bit because like the choreography is always like they're always like tumbling over each other, like it's the same kind of hits, like it's the same like they definitely have a style whenever they do hand-to-hand combat that
sure.
I kind of like. I don't like. It's not like my favorite thing in the world.
Mm-hmm.
So like that first half of the sequence, I was like, okay, they're just like fighting their way through. And in fact, like I was kind of annoyed whenever they were fighting with their hands, because I was like, why don't you use your bow? Come on, do something with the bow.
Right.
But the second half of the sequence where they're getting away in the car, where it's like very comic inspired, like I thought that was probably one of my favorite moments in the show. Like I thought visually that whole like tracking shot where she's like in the car, like leading out the thing, I thought that was beautiful. Like I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Gabe, how about you?
I thought like that car scene, like the whole like tracking one take scene was one of my favorite in the whole. Like I actually went back and tried to watch it again because it's like one take and
it was
like
very well done.
Yeah, and like the music was really fun. It was
Mhm.
like the Carol of the Bells at the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like
Yeah.
it just random. It was like chaos. You know, it was like fun chaos. They're like, oh, don't
Mhm.
shoot
Plus,
this. Like it was just random trick arrows and stuff like that, which I'm really happy
yes, the
they
trick
finally
arrows.
brought
Yeah,
in. You know,
all the,
it's like
all
really
the crazy
campy and
arrows that
really
they brought
lame,
in.
but like it worked. It worked for me. I was like, this is really funny. You know.
Yeah. It's a great scene in the sense because it hits on all cylinders, right? It hammers home the Christmas theme, like they go through like a Christmas tree, like park or whatever, right?
They ran over Santa.
They ran over Santa, but there's the music going, but there's also really well done action. It's a chase scene. It also features the Dodge Challenger seen in the original comic. That's a little Easter egg there.
Yeah.
It's also really funny, kind of to your point as well, because Clint lost his hearing aid, right? So like Kate keeps on trying to be like, "Yo, what arrow is this?" And he's just like, "Ah!" Like he says something completely different. It's like, "Yeah, try this one." It's like, "What? That doesn't
Yeah.
what?"
Yeah, the
That's
communication isn't quite there.
yeah. So
Actually, well,
it's
kind of
fun.
almost
Yeah, it
is
kind of is. Yeah.
because they're like, oh,
It's
like
that building that communication.
yeah, they're like, oh, I should be facing this way, and then like him
Yeah.
without
You
hearing,
see
you
intuitively.
face it this way
Yeah.
or something. I was like, oh, and she's like, oh, we're communicating. She's like, hey, look
Yeah,
at that.
yeah. It's them building their partnership, right? And it ends in it crescendos, right? In that one Pym particle arrow sort of thing.
Oh, that was so sick.
Oh, it was
The
so
pin particle
cool.
arrow.
It was so
Awesome.
sick.
You should
But
just do that every time. Like that's the best one. So
it
good.
was amazing. But also we see, like we said before, the arrows that are all very creative, the trick arrows, which is cool. But for you, Donovan, as someone who didn't read the comic, right? How did you feel about this, right? Because this is something that you weren't anticipating. Because for me, as soon as they got caught, I was like, okay, I know what's coming. Like I think they got to throw in the car chase scene at some point. So how would you feel?
I really liked it. I thought like what everyone said already, like all the trick hours were fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Just seeing how they interacted with each other was really cool. I just like backpedaling a bit. I'm kind of like meh on the tracksuit mafia.
Oh,
I
okay.
think like I just never took them seriously, and so a lot of the time like
Yeah.
Maya and
Yeah.
I forget the other guy's name. Kazi,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, I
Mhm.
like they were the only ones that I kind of like took seriously, but the rest of them, whenever I saw them on screen, I was like, man, who invited these guys? Like, can we kill Jack instead? Like, why are you spending time on this guy? Like, what's going on here? But the chase scene itself, I think, was like really well done. And that ending with like the Pym like particle arrow was so badass.
Yes.
I was just like, holy shit, because we always see like because Clint finally got his time to shine, even though it wasn't really. It was like partially him, partially Kate,
Right.
because she was the one doing all the arrow like shooting. But it was just like he's always been such like a backseat to like all the special effects and things that were
Yeah.
happening with like all the other characters in the Avengers, and just seeing him able to like shine there felt really rewarding and satisfying.
Mhm.
Um, I loved it a lot.
Yeah, it's just a great sequence, and like we said before, this is really where we're starting to see like so much of the series is about Kate and Clint actually becoming partners, and this is really the first time we see them become true partners and do like I guess you could call it a fusion attack if you really want to. Uh, but it was really good, and I even love the scene afterwards where like they're on the subway and like they talk about like, hey, we should probably take out the dog, and then like or like so you're a really good archer, and like Kate like freaks out or something like that. And
Mhm.
like she's saying all these things, and then like Clint doesn't even respond to something else just because he doesn't have his hearing aid. Like some really good comedy, and also that's exactly what happens on the New York subway. By the way, that's just like they get New York so well in the show.
Mhm. But
So well.
Yeah.
So many times during watching this show, I was just like, man, I wish I was back in NYC.
No, that I felt the
I
same
fucking
way.
yeah.
wish, dude. I felt so nostalgic for it every
Mhm.
single time that there was a scene of them like walking around outdoors or doing something that
Yeah.
like embraced the city that they were living in. I was just like,
Uh,
fuck, that's so good. They did
yeah.
it perfectly.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I love
And one thing I just want to bring up because I think we might have skipped over it. I don't know if it happened this episode, but there's that one scene where Kate's like, "So, like, why do you have a hearing aid?" And like you see Clint think about like,
Oh,
"Oh,
it was
well,
so good.
Montage.
There's all these reasons why.
Getting his fucking ass beat for 12 years straight.
It was pretty funny. I got a good kick out of it. But again, it goes back to showing like Clint's just a normal guy, guys. Like he's fighting aliens. He's going like scaling like skyscrapers. Like your boy has had it rough for the past like decade.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. Like would lose his hearing. It's like why isn't his hearing out? More is the better question, right?
Yeah, totally. So I think that was pretty cool. But this is where we see them. Right, they have to go to Chinatown to get his hearing aid fixed, but they also have a diner scene where they actually get some good character work in and talk to each other. How'd you all feel about this scene? Because I feel like this is one of the first times we actually see the characters sit down and really have a conversation, and they both really get to talk about themselves and really where they're at.
Man, yeah, I enjoyed it. There's so many scenes in this movie in this series that I enjoyed, like just because that was where kind of like you alluded to, and like I said more in the beginning, like we just got to see them chill, interacting. How do they talk with each other? How do they interact? And fuck, dude, like Haley Steinfeld just did such a good job of making me just like very focused on whatever she was saying. She was so organic. Their banter off of each other is really, really good. And it was like a nice moment where they got to just like, because a lot of the other times when they're interacting in this series, there's a shit ton of stuff going on, like the chase scene where there's like all these different things that distract from the characters themselves. And I think in a lot of Marvel shows or movies historically, they use those effects and those like cool action sequences as a crutch because they can't have good just character dynamic interaction without anything else fancy going on. And this show I think just did it so superbly. I love their dynamic endlessly.
Yeah, I'll say this before I get to Gabe and Ethan, but I think this is really one of the scenes where, for me, where I was just like, this is definitely a character-driven show. This is not a plot-driven show. And that's something that I always love to see in the MCU because it's so easy to get lost in the big spectacle. Shang-Chi Act 3. It's really easy to get lost in stuff like that. But for this one specifically, I think they really leaned in on that. But for Ethan and Gabe, as people who read the comic, this is like almost like ripped straight out of it, right? So how did both of you feel about it?
I thought like you're saying, like it just, I think the diner scene is just kind of like one of the many scenes that are very similar to the comic, has the same kind of humor as the comic, and I think the diner scenes kind of like exemplifies that, It's one of the jokes I always remember. It's like he texts Clint. He's like, "Thank God you're Hawkeye, not Hawk Ear," or something like that. And I was like, that's like something that'd be ripped right from the comic. That's kind of funny. Like that's like I totally bought her as a character because I could totally picture someone saying that, And I thought it's not like the Marvel quippy kind of thing. It was kind of like it showed up on screen. No one actually said it. You just kind of read it. But it's not like it's different than a typical Marvel humor. I think it's very like kind of like comic humor, like the Matt Fraction humor, which I really think was totally awesome.
For sure.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with Gabe there. Like, I think in general, just the sort of latter half of this episode was a lot of like them just really building the relationship and having a moment to breathe. You know what I mean? Like really developing the dynamic. I really liked really liked the scene where because he's lost his hearing, he can't he can't like have a phone conversation with his son.
Yes.
So she has to like write it down, and I thought like it was just like it was very clever. Like there was a lot of like they did like so much work acting in that scene with the expressions, like just back and forth as she's relaying to him everything that he's saying, because we can't really hear what he's saying either. So we're just sort of like we're with Clint where we're like trying to figure out what's going on, and we're like you can tell that like Clint is like really gutted that like he can't be there for his family at the moment, and like this gets through to Kate as well, and she sees it like, oh my god, like I feel so bad that Clint is stuck here because of me in some way. And I thought that scene was really well done.
That's actually, I'm really happy you pointed that, Ethan. That's actually one of my favorite scenes of the entire show because of what you just said. One, it really shows how much Clint values his family. Like, it's very clear that Clint's family is his anchor, right? They're what keeps him to
from going
like
full Ronin.
from going full Ronin, but also like at this point, Clint's like, man, I had enough of the hero life. I'm just trying to go be with my family. Like I don't want any more of this stuff. But it's just heartbreaking because you see how much he wants to be there for his son, especially after the snap. And then for Kate, like what you said, right? And we've said before, like Kate is on this high horse in the beginning, right? She's like kind of like, oh, always really confident, always trying to make things happen. Like, yeah, it's always going to be this way. And I think this is really one of the first humbling moments where she realizes, like, the consequences of my actions are leading to like this person clearly suffering and not being able to be with their family. And that's really where you start to see the evolution of the characters in that way. And I think at the same time, Clint, he also sees that Kate is someone who's like very, very willing to help and sees how like she could have just sat there on the couch, right, and just been like, yo, you're not like hearing what your son said. That was a really shitty conversation. Like she really went out of her way to make sure that was a really good interaction. So it was just terrific character building, and again, something that we don't necessarily see in the MCU that often. So it was something that I think we all can agree, unless Donovan and Gabe, unless you had other readings on that scene.
No.
Pretty good.
Absolutely not.
Awesome. So we go into episode 4, right? And like basically they go to the penthouse, and like the stinger is that like Jack has the sword up to Clint or whatever, right? And I was your favorite character, Donovan.
Jack is whack. This guy.
Yeah, I'll be honest. Like this whole sequence didn't do much for me. One, I think it's just kind of wild that like, yes, I have I'm the head of Max, like this security firm, so I can like track anything, which was like, okay, whatever.
They leaned on it a lot, that you like, can just track anything. Because
it's like
security,
It's like whatever, sure. But I did like at the end where Clint leaves and he goes to the elevator and like she says like, hey, like watch out, like please stay away from my daughter, keep her safe, that sort of thing. But I will say that this is the scene where like, because Jack was just like being such a like, I didn't want to call him like just himself, that I was like, the mom just seems like she's too good to be true.
Right.
This is where I started to suspect it. But how'd you all feel about it? Did you get that sus too, or how'd you feel?
Honestly, because of one thing that stood out to me is when she's there talking to Clint at the elevator, like, oh, like make sure my daughter is safe. The way that she brought up Black Widow was like so like it was almost like a threat to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because she's like, like Black Widow was a hero, and I was like, wow, like you're really gonna bring up like his friend that died like that? Like it was so direct and like kind of cutting in a way. And that's when I think I started to be like, okay, I think the mom has something going on here. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I think I looked at that and I didn't interpret it as like the mom would be doing something on her own, more as like I was still on this train of like, fuck Jack, like he's obviously bad because he doesn't know how to be a human, like no one's this fucking stupid, and the mom can't be that stupid that she's just like blindly madly in love with this dude. Like I was just like, yeah, she's probably working with him on whatever's happening right now, like they're on it together, and just fucking kill them both. Let's move on. Like, let's figure out what's going on next. Like, let's get back to the good stuff. But she was definitely acting sus. But the hard part for me to understand, like, when people brought up Black Widow was like, no one ever saw that dynamic. Like, that was something that was very intimate to them too, like their friendship.
Right.
And
True.
And I guess maybe the other Avengers. So it was always weird to me, like when other people would bring up Black Widow, like her mom did in this scene, and I was just like what? Like Tony Stark died. Why didn't you say Tony Stark? Like why didn't you say like fucking Howard the Duck? I don't know. Like what made you say Natasha there? I don't know. It felt like it was like for plot purposes.
No, you're right. I think that's probably why it also felt weird to me a little bit for bring her up like that. Yeah,
for sure. And I'm also just laughing because I'm thinking about Donovan's reaction during that whole scene where like, Jack, you never say the sayings right, sort of thing. Like it's like, oh come on, guys. Like,
bro, I fucking hate him. He's not real. He's not a person. He's a robot. Dude, when you said that he trained Clint in the comics, unbelievable. No fucking shot he did that. No way. He's too much of a loser.
Listen, he's got depth to him. We'll see in season 2 or something.
I hope he gets
maybe.
half.
I hope maybe he comes back.
Yeah. We'll see. Gabe, did you have anything you want to point out here before we get to another really good scene?
No, not really. I just thought like this was the scene where I was like, maybe the mom's a little more sus. Because I was like I was saying before, like Jack seems just like a very big mustache twirling. Yeah, like red herring. I was like, okay, maybe the mom could be part of it, you know. And she might have started might be a character in the comics a little bit, which I guess we can go into when we go
Sure. Yeah, so Clint goes off on his own, right? And I think this is a really funny scene, again, showing how human he is. He goes to, like, the aunt's apartment, and he, like, tapes up, like, all, like, the frozen food. And just like, yo, bro, he just needs a minute. He's like, just lies down on the couch sort of thing. But I actually love this scene because Kate comes in, and in her, like, laughter with her mom and Jack, like, I guess she realizes that, family time in the holidays is something that's really important. And she brings in all the stuff that Clint was supposed to do with his family, like watch like Christmas movie marathon and all that other stuff. And I think this is a really, really sweet scene. And I think it does so much to build their characters. Like, I love that scene from the, like, kind of inspired by the comics where he teaches her how to, like, flick the nickel to like get the TV to turn on and off. I was like, this is really, really sweet. And also, like, it plays into, like, the whole, like, it's the holidays. Like, this is a holiday show as well. But how'd you all feel about this sequence?
Yeah, like you're just saying, it's like a very big, it's a very Christmassy thing. Like, someone doesn't have Christmas. Now, this person's bringing Christmas cheer to you, and one of the things I really liked, it was very heartwarming, it was like, had one of that Christmas, like, cozy kind of vibes to it. And their whole, like, talking and dynamic, I loved it. I ate that shit up. Like, the whole thing with the boomerang arrows. Like, that's
why not use a boomerang?
I thought that was like this funny conversation. It's like, why wouldn't you have boomerang arrows? Because they come back to you, And it's like, then how'd you dodge it? You just step out of the way. And Clint looks at him like, the fuck? I thought that was really funny. Like, that sold me,
No, it's definitely a very wholesome scene.
Yeah,
and it's a nice breather after the action sequence.
For sure.
Big fan of every single just Clint plus Kate scene where they just got to hang out and vibe.
And I'll say this too, not that it's something that happens in the comics, but I'm so glad they didn't turn this the whole thing where, like, like Clint might be cheating on his wife or something like that. Like, it's very clearly like this relationship of, like, a mentor to a mentee, and they're kind of like they're, or as they later come to call it, like, they're partners sort of thing.
How old? Kate's young.
She's 22. Yeah.
She's 22. Oh, wow. That's older than I thought she was. I thought she was like 17 or something.
They actually say that.
I'm definitely glad they didn't do that either. Yeah. But I never got any vibes from
like,
that.
Hey, how old are you? 18? And she's like, no, I'm 22. And he's like, oh, same shit.
Yeah, they actually they make a joke. They literally rip, like, word for word a joke from the comic where it's like, this is Kate Bishop. She's not like she's 9 years. She's like 9 years old and spoiled rotten. Like, that was really funny. Like, it's just like, it's like Clint's way of describing her, basically, and it's perfect. Yeah.
He was definitely like the father to her that I really like their dynamic.
Yeah. What are you gonna say, Gabe?
Two things I guess I wanted to touch on. First was, I guess you're talking about, like, their age difference. Shout out to Clint's wife, Linda something, right? She's the person who played Velma or something like that.
Linda Cardellini.
Yeah. I just thought, like, they have, like, such a good relationship.
Yes.
Like, and then I think that's something, like, he would call and she would just be like, hey, like, I'm totally understanding. Like, you just got to do what you got to do, And, like,
you fucking kill that lady. Yeah.
Girl, like, I trust you completely, Like, how many people would be like that, It's like, like, I'm sending the kids away and I'm hanging out with this 22-year-old girl. Like, how many, I thought that was, like, it cements how good their relationship is.
Because it's so difficult, right? It's so difficult in a superhero show when you have the significant other, because so often they're used for, like, cheap tension and conflict,
right?
Where they're like upset for no reason, where they're, like, not understanding, and, like, they're always like they never seem to just be, like, supporting the main character. But like, it's nice to see, like, they have this relationship where, like, she's 100% like, you're Hawkeye, do Hawkeye things. Like, I get it. Like, I get it. I can help you however I can.
And then this is the scene where he's like, the shot I didn't take thing.
Right. I forget what the initial question was. I think it was like what's like the best shot you did,
Yeah,
or something like
I
that.
was just like, I remember
It was a weird
like,
transition. I'll be honest.
that was like I think that's one of the key scenes in this whole series. I think too. Right? He's like, this is the shot I didn't take, and like the thing he's referring to was like he was on a mission to like essentially kill Natasha, and he's like,
Right.
nah, I know she wanted out. So this happened sometime after her own movie, I think, something like that. And Hawkeye was going to kill him, but he chose not to. And he's like, I'm
Right.
so happy I didn't, because she turned out to be like one of the best people I ever knew. I thought that was really cool, like how they met and like kind of their relationship before the Avengers, you know, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it basically represents like this whole sequence where he starts talking about Natasha. It basically represents like Clint is like finally like laying it out like all on the table for Kate. Like he's saying like I'm not 100% who you think I am. Like I've done a lot of bad things.
Yes.
And like being a hero isn't like all glitz and glamour like you might think. And because he tells her about Natasha, and then like I think in the same sequence like she says like, you're Ronan, aren't you? And he's like, yeah, I am.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. It's definitely really good because it's also like something that we've seen from Clint throughout this show is that like he like he'll crack a joke and he'll have fun, like he'll banter, but he's not really someone that opens up and talks about himself openly a lot. And this is really the first time in the show that we see him opening up and talking about his issues, and like you could actually tell like it was something that he really needed, because afterwards he's like, thank you, Kate, like this was really, really good, I really needed this, but like go get some rest, like we're gonna have like a big day tomorrow, that sort of thing. And again, advances the relationship, and that's like the core, that the best part about this show, I think. Donovan, is there anything you want to say about that?
No, not really. I really strongly agree with the shot he didn't take thing. Like that was just a really nice moment. Talking, giving some more backstory without needing to show it, and talking more about that dynamic he had. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on, but just saying I love their dynamic and interactions.
Yeah.
They're really good. And I think like that whole sequence of her like making the Christmas, like bring Christmas to him or the movie night specifically to him was really wholesome.
Very, very wholesome for sure. And again, it goes back to that kind of Christmas theme. And so after this, we see like the plot move forward, right? Clint goes to interrogate Kazi because he's all like, look, I just got to end this. And he tells Kazi, like, just make sure she doesn't come after me again. They also start enlisting the help of the LARPers because Clint needs his arrows, his trick arrows. And so like they get more incorporated into the plot. I don't know if LARPers actually do this where they like go out in public and do like drills. I'm not a LARPer, like training, but like I thought it was pretty funny, like still to have them kind of come back into the fold. But then we get one of the bigger action sequences in this film. It's where Clint and Kate infiltrate Echo's apartment for more information. They try to get this Avengers watch. Wait, by the way, did they ever explain like what's the significance of this watch? I was
going to ask you.
Yeah, I never quite understood. Gabe, do you know? Or Donovan?
Yeah, so it shows up at the very end when they reveal what's inside the watch. I guess we can talk about that one like at the very end, or do you want to do that now?
Okay. Yeah, we could talk about it at the end, I guess.
Yeah.
All right.
The watch reveal.
Because I was also a little confused. Because I felt like I should have known it. I was like, what is that? I was like, what?
Okay. Same. But so basically they infiltrate Echo's apartment for info and to see if the watch is there, because that's like the MacGuffin right now at the very least.
They don't know it's Echo's apartment, funnily enough.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, so they don't know it's Echo's apartment. Also, I just want to say, I thought like the elevator scene on the way up was so funny when like she's helping with the bags. He's like, no, it's okay. I have to go. Like, it's really okay.
Yeah,
see, lady.
Like he's an Avenger. He's like, oh yeah, I'm an Avenger. Like he's in my ear. I'm best friends. And the dude's like a true New Yorker. He's like,
yes!
Don't talk to me. I don't care who you are. Don't talk to me.
New Yorkers have some of the best, like, all right, I'm out sort of thing. It reminds me of that one time where Donovan showed me this video where there was a guy dressed as a rat on the subway, and there's New Yorkers going down the stairs, sees him, he's like, nope, I'm just going the other way. Like,
bro, we don't fuck around with that. I got shit to do. Like, all right, bro, like you do you. I'm catching the fucking F. All right, I'm trying to get to a story. I don't got time for this shit.
Like, again, as we say, like this show is so New York accurate in so many different ways. ways. But so right, basically, Kate is the one who goes into the apartment, and there's a funny banter scene too between like who's going to go in and who's going to go out. And it's also, this is the beginning where we start to see Clint acting as a mentor, which I really like, because Clint's like, listen, like when you're doing these things, you always want a fast exit, not a fast entrance. Blah 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 blah. And again, it kind of shows that they're growing into that relationship. But regardless, right, it all goes south. One, because there's a silent alarm that we couldn't find out because it's Echo's apartment, right, and so the alarm is more for people who are deaf. And we also see not only Echo enter the scene, but also Yelena, aka Black Widow, Natasha's sister, kind of enter. And this was something that was teased at the end of Black Widow, the movie, in the post-credit scene. And so, very, very cool action scene. But overall, I guess, like, how'd you all feel about, one, all the character interactions, the reveals, but also just the scene in general?
I
was typical, like, go ahead, sorry.
No, you take it away, Gabe. Hit us with it.
I mean, to me, it was just kind of like, besides the reveals, it seemed like your typical run-of-the-mill Marvel action scene, you know, compared to like the Arrow scene in the car. It was just kind of like I think Marvel, you were saying this, Donovan, like it's the typical Marvel fight scene, you know, like punch kick kind of deal. I think the big part really was the reveal of who's fighting who and like whose apartment they're in and stuff like that. Which, you know, I love Florence Pugh, by the way. So when I saw Yelena, I was like, fuck yeah. So I was pretty pumped about that. But honestly, like, anything that doesn't deal with them fighting, you know, like, it had the typical Marvel action scene. So I was like, it was fun, don't get me wrong, but like, nothing to me really stood out, you know, that much.
Right.
Yeah, that's how I felt.
I also kind of...
go ahead, Donovan. Go ahead.
I also kind of felt like it ended weird. Like, we find out later that Yelena, like, removed Kate Bishop from the fight intentionally. Like, she wasn't trying to kill her. She was just like, get the fuck out of this fight. You don't need to be here. You're like a rando.
Right.
But, like, Maya, like, winds up running away because she sees, like, this shit got too serious. So she kind of, like, leaves, right? But then Yelena has her mission, which is to kill Clint, and she's so determined on it. So I'm just like, why did she run away? Like, I feel like she could have won then and there. Like, he's already banged and bruised up. Like, what's going on? Like, I thought it kind of ended very, very it was just a very anticlimactic ending.
Sure.
And I didn't appreciate that. But other than that, I was kind of fine with it. I thought it was interesting seeing how they fought, like, using the bow and arrow, or how, like, Clint fought, especially using it for physical combat. But the ending of it just left a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth.
No, I definitely agree with Donovan in that the ending was just sort of came, and we were like, oh, okay, like I guess everyone's just taking a break for another episode, and we'll come back. But like, which is kind of like a deeper problem that I have with the show a little bit, which is that, like, it feels like there's because there's like a lot of villains question mark, but they're not
moving
really
parts. Yeah,
there's a lot of moving parts, but the problem is, like, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of parts that are like really like contrasting each other, going against each other, like head to head. Like, it's all like this person wants to fight this person, but like they also have something else to do at like 2:00, I guess, and they leave. But like, it's so like for me, it's like this, it's like almost like a too many cooks spoil the soup kind of thing, where there's like too many villains, I feel like, and they're all like trying to like they're like all like in line trying to like get their spot. So like I felt like, but that's just like a deeper thing. Other than that, like I thought that the fight scene, like it was okay. Like it was okay. Like there were some interesting moments, like when she's on the wire and she's like, "Oh crap, I can't. Like I'm stuck. I have to keep moving."
Right.
And like, the way that she falls off the building and she almost like she has to get saved by Clint. I thought that was like visually kind of neat. But other than that, it was mostly like the only big reveal of the scene was that it was Yelena, and we were like, "Oh shit, she's here." So I thought, and like Florence Pugh is like such a good addition to the MCU. I think like she really fits the role.
Yes.
And like I'm really excited to see more of her in the future, just in general.
Question for you guys. How do you like her accent? Too much?
Yeah.
Just right?
It's a little too much at times. I do think that, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I'm used to it, at this point, but like, and maybe I'm biased because at this point I like the character, but like I can see like it's not. I feel like accents in the MCU have never been great. Like they've never been that good.
They haven't been.
Yeah.
They haven't been. Well, I think in general, as an actor, like accents are pretty hard to do. Like there's just one like funny clip on YouTube where it's Andrew Garfield in Amazing Spider-Man 2, and he does 3 different accents in like 10 seconds. So it's just hard to do.
Sure.
But I agree with a lot of you. I didn't think the action was that great. I think the character work, right? Like the ending that we get to where Clint realizes how real this is because there's a Black Widow assassin after him. He's like, Kate, we're not partners. Like, get out. Like sort of thing. Like, I can't endanger you, especially after what he promised to her mom. I think that's really cool, and that's like where we get to the lowest point of their relationship, sort of thing. But I agree with you that like the other stuff is kind of like the one thing that I just remember thinking was when Kate was on like the rope and she had, like was on her bow, like trying to get across. I was like, damn, she's going full pipe slider on Ninja Warrior right now. But other than that, like it didn't really do much for me, even if it does kind of set up a lot of different things. So after that, right, we go to the next episode 5, and I actually really like this opening because we get more backstory on Yelena, even though we got a lot of that in the Black Widow film, right, where
it was so cool to see.
Yes, it was really well done, and I also love the parts you were like they like shove like the I guess solution or whatever you want to call it, the cure for the Black Widow like indoctrination, and she was like, "You just got my carpet like all red, like what's wrong with you?" Like sort of thing. Like I thought it was like a pretty cool subversion of expectations.
The humor,
But I also really love the thing too, where like she just goes to the bathroom, and then she like comes back out. And,
like, we see it, right? Like what it's like to get snapped.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
Yeah, take it away.
Because like she's in the bathroom washing her hands, and like all of a sudden like she like it's like she like I forget if she like looks at herself for a second and like notices that something's about to be wrong, but like she just like explodes into like dust, and like the whole room like everything's gone for like an instant.
Right.
And then she like reforms, and like the bathroom's different, and she's like, what happened? Like, where am I? Like clearly, like it's cool to see, like, for the person like in the moment, it was like an instantaneous thing, and they were like, what happened? But for everyone else, it was like 5 years.
Yeah.
So she comes out of the bathroom, and she's like the Black Widow that was there is like, oh, it's you. Like, you came out finally. No, yeah, it was definitely. Oh, and what I really liked about this scene, the backstory scene, was how it ended, because she's like, oh, I have to tell Natasha like that I was gone, and like there's like a pause, and the camera stays on her face, and she's like you can tell that like she's reading the expression. It's like, oh, it's so good. It's such a good way to show it in that moment.
So well done.
like Yelena, like I have to tell you something. Like, oh no, and like, oh, it was great.
I really liked it too. Here's my question. Okay, so everyone who was like in a car or in a plane or something, and then they get snapped. Do they get snapped in the air? You know, like what happens to those guys?
Yeah,
like,
I think the whole thing is like
right?
they go, yeah, like they're back where they were.
They back where they were. So are they all dead all of a sudden? You know what I'm saying? Like if you're in a car going 80 miles per hour and you get snapped, do you reform going 80 miles per hour? Do you just like slam into a wall or something?
Momentum
like that?
carry over in the blip? Do you still have your inertia?
I don't have the momentum, but
I don't think you have.
At the very least, the people in the air would have a problem. Yeah.
It's either one or two.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a thing?
Yeah.
Like what happens to all those people?
It's either basically like you go back to exactly where you were, or you go back to the thing that you were in. So if like they were in a plane, they would have re-flipped back to that seat in the plane, maybe on top of someone or something like that. But I like to think of it more like they just fucking popped in the air, they just started falling, and we just had mass deaths because like that's way more realistic. Like what? How does it remember?
It's more consistent. Yeah, definitely.
It's more consistent.
That they all just fucking die.
Let the record show I'm not rooting for these deaths. I'm just saying that's the more...
Yeah, let the record show that Donovan is, in fact, not a fan of genocide. I promise.
I'm not. Wait, whoa! Genocide. We went from 0 to fucking 8,000.
I just right. He wrote it on the bathroom.
It was me. I was the one in the bathroom. No, I don't think Thanos is right. I think Jack does need to die. Hawkeye, though. I think
Jack Thanos wasn't right, and Jack was wrong. That's all.
Jack was wrong. That
Yeah.
I will die on that hill, and long live Cersei. Cersei's the best girl ever. So that's a different movie. We're not going there.
Well, we're not going there.
No, I'm just playing.
But yeah, Elena, this scene is really, really good. Dom, did you have anything you want to say about this before we move on?
No, nothing really to add. I agree wholeheartedly. Like Yelena's backstory and all of that stuff, I think all of those shots were done really well. I love the like you called out like the whole like, bro, my carpet, like all those different moments and like all the lingering when she kind of realized what happened. I'm just glad we get to see more of like what happened during these periods, because like
Yes,
it's so easy to just forget like, oh my god, like this impacted the span of everything, like for all of these characters, and the snap, not the blip. I don't know what the blip is. That never happened. But the snap, like that's going to be a defining moment for every single character that comes forward in the MCU. Like whether it's a part of their, like they got blipped, someone they love got blipped, and like it's going to be a recursive moment. And I think that's really cool that we get to see more of it. Yeah, how it impacts them.
And to Gabe's point, or excuse me, to Ethan's point, like I'm just so glad that we get more Yelena in general. I think she's a wonderful addition to the MCU, and let's like not mince words. Huge shoes to fill, considering like Natasha, aka Scarlett Johansson, isn't going to be in the MCU as far as we know anymore, right? Like very, very big shoes to fill, and I think she does an amazing job. And it makes so much sense for her to be a part of this story, considering everything that kind of happened. And so I'm really happy to have her, and she's just so likable, and we really see that when she like meets up with like Kate in her apartment. It's like, hey, I made some mac and cheese, and like they just talk and like have a moment. Like I thought it was like it was definitely like okay, Elena is clearly not like this cold hearted like killer sort of thing, but at the same time there was definitely a little bit of tension where like, yeah, if Elena wanted to kill her, she could, like at literally any second sort of thing. So I thought it was definitely a really, really interesting way to build up both characters in that way. But Gabe, you already said that you're a big fan of Florence Pugh. So how'd you feel about this scene?
Oh, dude, I like. First off, mac and cheese and hot sauce. Mwah. I do that shit all the time. It's actually such a good combo. No, but I liked their relationship a lot. It kind of like it seems like the series kind of like parallels like the new and the old, like Clint and Hawkeye a lot. And I really like where this, I guess quote unquote new Hawkeye and Black Widow are going. Like I like their dynamic a lot.
Right.
Like Florence Pugh kind of treats her like an equal / cute puppy kind of thing.
She always says her full name.
Yeah,
funny.
Like it's
like Bishop,
like a cute puppy kind of way. It's like, oh, like that was really good. Like, I like, I guess a little bit of the foreshadowing. A lot of the talks of like, oh, the Rockefeller Center, your Statue of Liberty being remodeled. I want to go see New York and stuff like that. So I thought that was kind of cool. Like, I didn't really see it my first pass through, but like, I like their dynamic a lot. Really, like, oh, this is funny. I wouldn't mind a whole series, just those two.
Yeah,
we probably will get them.
Well,
honestly.
eventually,
like,
eventually,
I can see it. Yeah.
What about you, Donovan? How'd you feel about it?
Man, I don't know what y'all are talking about, mac and cheese and hot sauce. That shit look nasty.
No way.
Oh my god, what is this guy talking
specifically
about?
Sriracha?
Ooh, sriracha, it's great.
Sriracha and mac and cheese? It works.
We'll see. The jury's still out on it for the jury's still out on it for me. We'll see. But I did really like that whole scene. I also kind of like going back to what we talked about a bit earlier. I feel like Yelena's accent sometimes feels like super fucking thick in moments. And then other times, like I feel like she forgets that she's supposed to have an accent. So it's like it's not crazy. I'm not crazy about it. I also think like her character just felt super jokey to me for no reason. Like I didn't understand. Like maybe that's just how she is as a person, but like I don't know. Like she just got she got snapped back to reality, and she's just like, wait, my sister's dead. This guy killed her, and she's working with him. Like, no, fuck you. You're cool. Like, I'm killing everyone. Like, I don't know why she was so laid back and chill about everything, but maybe that's just me. But it's like, that's your sister.
It was definitely a tone thing that I had a problem with too. Because you're right, like it's a very serious quest that she's on to like.
Right.
Because like I'm not super crazy about her whole revenge thing. I don't know how you guys feel about it, where it's like she thinks that like Clint's the one that did it and all this. I felt like it was a little. I was kind of out to be. I was glad to see it resolved. I think I was like, oh, thank God that we can move past this.
Right.
But yeah, she's kind of it's almost like the writers of the show, like they weren't quite sure like how serious to make her for a lot of the show. Like how much of a threat she should be, because most of the show she's like very like I have to kill Clint, but like I'm in no rush. It seems to be her like seems to be like, her MO, which is very odd.
Yeah.
But and like it comes across very weird. You're right. It's strange.
Yeah, I think like for me, I agree in that it's not like it's like 50% there sort of thing. Like they're missing a chunk of it, and I suppose we'll talk about it soon because we get to episode 6. But like so much of for me, it's just like when Clint tells her, and it's a great scene in terms of what Jeremy Renner brings of it, but we're just like, oh, she sacrificed herself or something like that, and then like for me in my head, I'm just like, what was like she told actually happened, like
what was the conflict?
Because doesn't she ask him like what happened, why did you do it or something like that, and it was just like, did you not like, aren't you an assassin, shouldn't you have like tried to investigate and figure out what happened, sort of thing. And so I definitely felt like that was a little odd. It would have I think if we had what's her name, the person who's like been recruiting everyone behind the shadows, like that recruited U.S. agent as well as Yelena at the end of Black Widow.
I think, something like that.
Val.
And we see her be like, this is what happened, and we want you to hunt her down. And it's like
we were missing a chunk.
And like super like clearly shows that Clint is the one who killed her or something like that. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, like I get it. I see why she's so bent on it. But to Ethan's point as well, it's like she like claims to really want to kill her, but like if she really wanted to kill Clint, like there are so many, like as an assassin, so many, like first off, I hate this whole trend in like in any blockbuster. It's just like, oh, I'm a sniper, I better use my laser to like better make sure
use my laser.
Sniper, like that's like the literal opposite of what you should do.
My fucking little like cat toy thing.
Like what? But regardless, like the point being, like if she really wanted Clint dead, there's a whole bunch of different ways to do that. And so much was just like, I'm going to confront you head on, and like we're going to have a fist to fist fight. And it's just like I'm happy, and I love that scene where clearly Jeremy is like really emoting and really giving it his all. But like it only works in a vacuum. Like when you think of it outside of it, it's kind of like, what? Like what's really the crux of the issue kind of thing?
Like to me, like the ending of it on that ice that you talk about, it kind of saves it for me. Like thinking about it more, because like to me, because what we saw in that scene where like he's telling her like, oh yeah, she sacrificed herself,
right?
And then Yelena starts saying that he's lying,
right?
To me, what that says, it's like, oh, she wants to believe that Clint, like she wants to believe that Clint killed her, because she doesn't want to believe that Natasha would leave her like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because like after they had finally just met and reconciled, that she would just go out and like straight up like leave.
Right.
In her mind, you know what I mean? Like she was sacrificing herself, but like in essence, she was leaving her alone like that. And I think she didn't want to believe that, which I think works for me. But it's like it came in right at the end, and it's like, okay, like it helped a lot, but like I would have loved it earlier. You know what I mean?
I mean, like, there's so much that I really love about that scene too. I love when like when Clint is the one who does like the bird song or like the birds sing, and like that's when Yelena like breaks and just like, how did you know that? What's going on? Blah blah blah. Like the acting is so good at it. It's just like the lead up to it. And it's just like, for me, it's all like But I guess now we're talking about it, so we might as well finish like this note. Gabe and Donovan, how did you feel all about, I guess, the dynamic between the two, and I suppose Yelena's place in this larger story?
Do you want to go, Donovan?
Gabe, you do the honors.
Okay.
I insist.
I kind of liked it. I mean, I wish. I mean, I guess I'm being selfish. I wish she had more to do because I like Florence Pugh a lot.
Right.
Yeah, I think
I think it made sense she was in the story. I kind of liked, kind of like what I was saying before, like consequences and stuff like that.
Right.
Because of what they did in Endgame, Yelena's going after her. So it's a lot of, I feel like a lot of the themes is like consequences of the actions and stuff like that. But you're right. Like I feel like they need to. I wish she was in scenes more where like she's more of like a badass, I guess. Because I feel like, yeah, she was fighting. Those scenes where she was fighting Kate. By the way, were really great scenes. Like the one in like the office building,
The hallway.
the
Yeah.
hallway.
but she's
Yeah,
not really
it's a
fighting
really
her,
good
right?
scene.
You're
But
right.
like,
Right.
I really feel like Leanna should really be kicking Kate's ass.
Yeah.
That's what it seems like. It seems like they're very more equal, which she's like, oh, that was a really good thing here. But like, I feel like either she's pulling her punches with her, but I don't know. I feel like
She
we're not
is,
really
yeah,
seeing
she
like the
is.
full potential of her, and I think I
Right.
want to see that is really where I'm getting that. But in terms of the relationship with Clint, I think it works. It really does.
What about you, Donovan?
I agree. I think it works. I think there's definitely elements about it where it feels weird, kind of like you had mentioned, Adam, like or maybe someone else mentioned it, but like just like why do you not have the details about what's going on here? About like what happened with Clint and all this sort of stuff. But I think Yelena as a character is very cool to have in here.
Yeah.
Brings a lot to the story overall, just because we get more of this character that I think a lot of people really loved in Black Widow. Um, and I definitely want to continue to see more of her um, after this series. I hope she continues onwards and builds
Yeah.
up. Um, I do agree with what Gabe said a little bit. I wish she had a little bit more to do
Yeah.
in this series. I would have been okay if we focused less on the tracksuit mafia, or I definitely would have been okay if Jack just got deleted from the script. Um, there's elements there that I think we could have used to spend more time on her character, but overall I think it was still good.
Yeah. I'll say this just to round out this topic before we go to one of the next big scenes, and it fits in a little bit nicely. I think that um, this is actually one of the. I think what Jeremy Renner does in this series, especially, is probably one of the best performances in all of like the MCU. And I only say that because it's not like super showy sort of thing, right? Like he's not like wildly emoting or something like that. A lot of it's like subtle things, and you can tell he's clearly kind of going through it. And because the kind of caliber of an actor that Jeremy Renner is, I think one, he does that scene with Elena where he breaks down and says like she sacrificed herself and all that other stuff. Like I think he does that really really well. But even the scene where he's talking with Natasha at the monument, I think is also really good too.
Yeah, that was a good scene.
Like it really shows like
so good.
He's in with some serious survivor's guilt sort of thing, right? And not only just survivor's guilt, but also the death of one of his best friends sort of thing. And obviously his past is coming back to haunt him in a certain way. But so much of this series is about Clint coming to grips with his past, but also learning to open up and be a hero and embrace the fact that he is a hero and the positive change that can come with being that, despite not having any superpowers. Right. So much of the show is about how Kate, as really almost everyone in the show, doesn't have superpowers, but they still are able to influence so many of the people around them in a positive way. And I think that Jeremy really rises to the occasion, and the scene at the Black Widow Black Widow monument or memorial, whatever you want to call it, does a really good job of showing that. But Ethan, you said that was something that stuck out to you as well. How'd you feel about it?
Oh, the plaque. Honestly, the plaque, because basically it's a plaque for like all the Avengers who fought at the Battle of New York, whatever they call it. And I thought that for me, that was like the one moment in I think the whole show where like I actually felt like I got like a little bit emotional, like because I was like, wow, like because like just seeing all the names of like everybody gone, I was like, geez, like I could really like feel what Clint was going through basically in that moment. and I thought that it was just really powerful, actually. So I liked it a lot.
It was super nice too, because we also kind of got that moment, where we got to have some sort of farewell to her character, because like, yes, we had Black Widow, which came fucking 7 years too late, but like, but we had that movie to kind of celebrate her character, but like after Infinity War and Endgame, like she was kind of the one character that I feel like Marvel forgot about as like one of the big casualties of that movie. And so it kind of like felt like they gave an opportunity to be like, hey, like let's give her some semblance of a send off, and like let's give her some recognition for the impact that she's had on some of our other characters. So I kind of appreciated it a bit more for that too. There's also a part of me that just wonders, because he like had his hearing aid out, he's just doing this like, I imagine like, what if some random fucking New Yorkers walking by, just hearing him talking to a sign, just looking at him, be like, you good, bitch? Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
whatever. I gotta get to work. I'm late for my
Yeah.
job. Like, I don't got time for this shit. They just walk past him. He's just standing there talking to a sign. But it was a very nice moment.
Yeah, you're right. She was the only one that like didn't get like a funeral.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
like
very
everyone connected
intentionally,
for like
because she
Tony's
had,
funeral, and then
Mhm.
everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Black Widow died," and then the only people
Yeah,
who died there
yeah.
was like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
is like Clint, right? And he's like, "Oh yeah, like she's dead." But like everyone, like that's it. That was the only thing they kind of did for her. I was like, "Oh, that kind of sucks," you know?
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely did her dirty a little bit, it felt like, because she kind of got overshadowed by the other deaths in that movie.
Right. Well, and part of the reason why Clint is doing this, right, is because he's basically like saying his piece before he has to like basically don the Ronin persona again to try and like settle a score with Echo and hopefully put all this stuff behind him, right?
Yeah.
And so we get
Yeah.
this scene. I'll be honest, like I didn't really think much of this action scene. It was kind of like
Oh, where he's like a ghost. He's like going around, like
I
killing
think
them all.
again, like I just expect so much of the choreography to be better, and it's just not. And I don't want to call it bad. I just I would think that like Clint as this elite fighter would be fighting like much more efficiently, but it's almost like he's going even with Echo. Maybe he's pulling punches. I don't know, but like I just expected a little bit better. But the crux of the scene, right, is that Kate not only helps Clint, but also he tips off Echo that there was an informant. It was an inside job sort of thing.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
really where the evolution for that character kind of goes. And it goes to what Donovan said he didn't really like. But in general, how'd y'all feel about like I guess this action scene and the way the progression of the character for multiple people in this? Because Kate comes back after this, right? But this is after Clint says, "Go away," like we're not partners, that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
how'd y'all feel?
I thought it was okay. It was all right. I wasn't like crazy about the whole Echo storyline. Like, I like bits of it, but it's difficult, because it's like she's an antagonist, but she's not, as we kind of find out, she's like, they kind of deflect her because they almost don't want to they don't want to take it to the natural conclusion where it's like, oh, Clint kills her, or she like she dies or something like that. Instead, they redirect her into this whole thing where like she realizes that like her father's death was like an inside job and all this other stuff. But you're right in that the action wasn't anything to write home about. Like, it was kind of neat to see Clint go like full Ronin mode, I guess, and like have the suit and all that stuff. But other than that, like, it was all right. It was okay. It felt kind of mad to me.
Gabe and Donovan.
Yeah, pretty much. Like looking back, I think there's other parts of this episode that shine way brighter. So as a result, this part for me didn't really stand out too much, which is fine. But like, I don't know. I think Ronin's supposed to be like this hardcore, like the killer side of Hawkeye,
Right. The dark side.
I really wish they could have brought that dark side out a little more. We saw that like physicality or that some kind of brutality or something like that, And I don't think that they really brought that, which
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I wish we got to see a little bit more of it.
Yeah, I mean, I talked a little bit before about like this whole thing about like she confronts Kazi and she's like, "You weren't there," and it's just like, "Oh, okay, like we already know what's kind of happening, whatever." But it does end on a really cool note because we get the
You're
Kingpin
right.
reveal
You're right.
with Vincent
Yeah.
D'Onofrio returning from his role in Daredevil on Netflix, as well as we get, I think it's revealed in this episode too, right? Where like
Yes.
the person who hired Yelena to
Yes.
kill you is my mom, sort of thing, and we find out the mom and Ron's in cahoots with Kingpin. I love this reveal. First, I just want to say I love Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin. I think he plays the role so well. And I'm so glad that they're bringing back some of those characters from the Marvel Netflix shows, like like Kingpin.
Yeah, way back in the day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Vincent D'Onofrio.
Mhm.
So, how'd y'all feel about this? Like, I was, bro, when I saw, I was like, yo,
It was
pretty cool.
fucking lit. It was a very good reveal. I was very pleased. He was one of my favorite characters from the Daredevil show. Every character from the Daredevil show is favorite. But if there was one that I was like, I want them to come back, and I hope they do, it was absolutely Kingpin. Every scene he is in, he fucking dominates it. You just focus on him, and there's just like this, like the hairs on the back of my neck go up, dude. I'm just like everything. He's like just perfect, and I was so pumped. And like as we get to see more of him in like episode 6 when the fight happens, and I know we'll talk about it, but I was just like, man, this guy packs a fucking punch. He's like, Kate, get the fuck out of here! Boom! When he punches, he goes flying. And it's like, whoa! Dude, he's so good. I love him.
Yeah.
I was so pumped because like I saw Daredevil and he's like you said, he's a presence. He's also very physical. He like beats the living snot out of like people in that
you can
series.
curse, Gabe. It's okay.
So I was like, is he gonna bring that to like Clint or something like that? I was like,
right.
What's I forget what the rate. I guess that's PG-13, right? But like I was wondering like how he could bring that physicality, his brutality, and his like, presence to the end of this series. Even though like I'm gonna be like objectively, I'm really pumped, but like it was kind of like a last minute reveal. Like I know they alluded to like the quote unquote uncle and stuff like that, but he kind of came out of nowhere. And I feel like if it wasn't, and it was like some random dude, I'd be like, oh, who the hell's that? But like it was Kingpin. And that's
it's always Kingpin when they're in New York.
Yeah,
it always ends up being Kingpin.
Let's be honest, Ethan. No one cares about Hammerhead or Silvermane. It's always Kingpin.
I forget this guy. At the end of the day, like the guy behind it, it's always Kingpin.
It's always Kingpin. Yeah, that was pretty hype. And like the credits showed the Mr. Grinch thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's a really good song to like end it on. I was like, oh shit, I need to see this in the last episode.
Yeah. That's how I felt too, because I saw it after they had all been released. So I was binging it. As soon as I saw Kingpin, I'm watching the next episode. I don't care.
Yeah.
I'm staying. I'm watching this sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm right there with you. Now the next episode opens with Kingpin, in the flesh, and we see like more insight into the relationship with Kate's mom. And this really get to see that Kate's mom is in, some sort of trouble, right? That Kate's mom is dealing with a criminal, but she wants her out, right? So like, there's part of it that's like she clearly doesn't agree with it morally in some form or another. I think like what really stuck out to me, one, I just love that Kingpin is like pimped out, but like he also has like a Hawaiian shirt of like he's just rocking the Hawaiian shirt.
That's
like
actually from the comics. Yeah. That's from the comic.
Yeah. So I noticed that, but the other thing I noticed too is that Vincent D'Onofrio, man, his performance has so many like little nuances. Like there's that one time when like the mom says like I want out, and he's reacting, and like he's like his eye is like twitching, but also like his cheek is like moving, and like you clearly like he's not happy about it. Like Vincent D'Onofrio is just he's such a great actor, and he embodies the role so well, like we've said before. How'd you all feel about like this reveal of the backstory from Kate's mom? It's definitely a little late in the series, but did you think it added more depth, more to the series? How'd you feel?
Personally, didn't care. I didn't care too much for it. I was kind of focused on like, all right, you gave us the thing. Like, Kate's mom is also just like trying to like stand up now, and like she all of a sudden like sees moral. She's like, I'm out. Like my daughter's in danger, and I'm like, shut up. Like you didn't give a fuck about your daughter this whole time because you were doing all of this. Like if you actually cared, you would have never gotten involved in the first place. Like I was just kind of like seeing that. I was like, and I felt the same way actually seeing his relationship with Echo as well, which was like kind of brief, but you kind of see like he kind of looks at her like a daughter. I was like, no. Like, I don't need any of this. We're in the last episode. Let's get to the good shit. Like, let's fast forward a little bit. Let's get to some stuff happening.
Right.
And I kind of felt that way until we get to like the little montage sequence before we get to the final like dinner party of the event. So I was like, fast forward.
I think this is for me. This whole murder thing was like part one of the weaker parts of the series because I feel like there's two big plots, like Clint trying to get rid of Ronan, and then them trying to solve this murder mystery. And I feel like I don't know. For me, I feel like this murder mystery, like they did it in the first episode a little bit, the first in the beginning, and they kind of drops it, and then it reveals. And then by that time, I'm like, I don't. There's so many reveals with like Yelena and like Echo, and like I'm like, I don't really care about this murder mystery thing anymore. You know?
Yeah.
I thought like, I was saying like she reminded me of this character Madame Mask in the
from
comics.
The comics.
Kind of similar, but not really. But like, I don't know. By the time that reveal came along, I was like, oh yeah, like this whole started because of a murder mystery kind of thing, and it didn't really go down that route. I feel like really at all. You know, so I don't know. It's just when I heard that reveal, I was like, I was like, okay, let me go back to more other stuff. You know, that you built up.
You're right. It was because it is other stuff. Like it wasn't like enmeshed with everything. Like it was just this separate plot line to keep like Kate sort of like in the story, Kate and her mom in the story. But like it didn't really feel like it was affecting anything else. You know what I mean? So it kind of fell flat at the end.
Yeah, so I'll just say this right now. I think one of the biggest problems with this show is that it sets up so many different things, but it doesn't pay off those setups all that well. Like it's not even across the board, right? Some of them are really, really great. The setup, like we said before, of Kate and Clint is so good. It is so good. But there's other stuff where they kind of drop the ball, and it's because of a combination of things. One, it's because sometimes there's not enough time devoted to those things, or it's because, hey, we're saving that for season 2 or whatever they decide to do, sort of thing. And that's, I would say, the biggest flaw of the show is that there are so many things built up. Like we already talked about Jack. You could take Jack out of this show, and it really, like, nothing is really missing besides like, oh, there's a red herring of like who's actually up to it, sort of thing. And I guess it's cool to see Jack like get like a cutlass and start like, I guess, killing people at the end. But like there's just so many things that are just like built but don't actually go anywhere. And I think this is absolutely one of those things where it's like, oh, okay.
You're right, because like honestly, like, and this is just like a personal taste thing where like I felt like this whole series, like there wasn't really like a strong antagonist. Where like there wasn't like a main person where we're like, oh fuck, this guy's coming. Like it turns out like Kingpin's behind a lot of it, but like he comes in at the very end, and like pretty much all the other antagonists get basically like deflected because like we deal with Echo like in episode 5, and she starts doing her own thing and having her own stuff. And Yelena, like she said, like she comes in kind of late as well, and she also like resolves pretty quickly, and like it's not a huge like threat for most of the show. So like I felt like the show kind of lacked this like urgency that I felt like it maybe could have had, because like Clint's like, he's like, oh, I can't go back to my family. I have to like figure out all this stuff. And it's like, are you sure you can't just go back? Because like there's not that many people like hunting you down here. Like I don't know. But yeah, like Adam pointed out astutely that like there's a lot of things set up that I felt like didn't give me the payoff that I maybe wanted.
Right. Yeah, I think, and this is something that just, this is the classic Marvel problem, right? One of their biggest problems is always like they don't necessarily have the strongest villains in every single film, right? Like there are some fan favorites. We know about Thanos, we know about Loki, we know about Killmonger, but for every Killmonger, right, there's that the friggin' elf from Thor 2. I don't even remember his name. Like
there's the guy from
Killmonger. There's a Jack.
Yeah,
Jack.
There's a guy from Iron Man 3 whose power is I can get really hot, and I'm really mad.
I hated that guy.
I'm so mad at Iron Man because he stood me up on the roof. It's like, come on, guys, like let's come up with something a little bit better here. So, I agree wholeheartedly at that point, sort of thing. Now, one thing I do want to say, I love this scene so much, is where like Kate and Clint like really become partners, and they'd resolve to like, you know, figure this all out and get it done at this like really, I guess, set piece kind of ending. But they're building the arrows together, and I love this scene because it's like, this is when they're officially partners, and you see like Kate's like actually labeling the arrows because Clint never does, and I think it's such a great like bonding between them. And I also think like it adds two things. One, it continues this whole thing of like, for most of the series, Clint has always been like the paternal kind of guy. Like in Avengers: Age of Ultron, we talked about how like he calmed down Quicksilver, which is like, hey, dude, like none of this makes sense. Like, yeah, and then Scarlet Witch, right? He's the one who helps get Scarlet Witch out in Civil War, that sort of thing. Like, trust me, I got you, that sort of thing. And even with his own kids, we've seen the kind of mentorship he has with them. And two, I actually only found out about this fairly recently. Jeremy Renner actually told Marvel like to fuck off, and he was like, "I don't want to be Hawkeye anymore if I can't spend more time with my daughter," sort of thing. Like he literally said that to them. He was just like, "Go ahead and recast me. I don't care. I want to spend more time with my daughter." And I feel like so much of that probably like that love of his daughter and wanting to be with his family kind of played into this series, and he's probably channeling a lot of that kind of energy and feelings.
And Marvel was like, "You're perfect. We'll pay you double."
Yeah. You're hired. He's like, "Fuck off. I'm gonna be hired." You got it.
And I think also that's part of why this show, at least to my knowledge, some of it looks like it's shot on location, right? Like, you know, it's not like where Jeremy Renner's like sitting in one giant set where it's all like green screens around him, right? Like he's doing some real true acting, right? And that I'm sure plays a part in it as well. But did you guys like the whole I guess like battle prep and arrow making scene?
I thought it was really cute. I enjoyed it a lot. We got to just see a little bit of like the behind the scenes, you know, like how does Hawkeye prep for all these things, and more of the dynamic between him and Kate. I thought it was very, very cute. I was vibing with it.
It's also the scene, right, where because I think doesn't he ask her in this scene like because he basically like this is like the last time that he asked her like you're serious about this, right? Like you want to be a hero, and like because like a hero isn't just like, you know, like having fun and like punching people, like it's actually like being in danger and doing all these things. And she's like, yeah, I want to do this, which I thought it's like a powerful kind of like come full circle kind of moment.
Yes, absolutely. So I guess we'll just get right into like the big set piece ending here. Right, the setup, the premise is initially, I think it's like a charity dinner or something of Kate's mom or something like that. And basically basically like they set it up so the LARPers are like the service people, and basically they're helping them out.
Those
and
LARPers,
there's the MVP supports, and basically it turns into this whole thing where the tracksuit mafia shows up and they like trying to kill Clint, and also Kazi is there. He also is trying to kill Clint. At the same time, Elena's there and trying to kill Clint. And there's they're all just trying to kill Clint, right? But there was some fun things. We already talked about how Kate and Yelena go back and forth in the elevator in the hallway. It was like, that was like a really good kick or something like that. Like that was pretty good. But there was that scene too where Clint like he shoots the arrow to the Christmas tree and like gets on it, and then like Kate's like, Clint, where are you? I'm on the Christmas tree, and just like, okay, like I'll get you. I was like, no, don't get me down, that sort of thing. Like,
I can't believe she destroyed the Christmas tree, bro. She just fucking destroyed it, just like the bell tower. She's like, you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah,
bring the whole thing
Kate
down.
Clearly has no respect for any sort of like historical monument where she is, that sort of thing. What are you gonna
say? I will say this is the one time it's not accurate, because that tree there's so many people around that tree. During Christmas.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there would be people on that ring too. There's no way a ring the ring is
there were no,
it was like weirdly empty.
Yeah,
unrealistic. Right. Totally unrealistic.
Yeah,
especially on like Christmas Eve or whatever. Like there were people down the block.
You already know everyone's trying to get that picture for the gram. You already know.
Photo.
You already know. Now I also love the scene too where Jack is talking to the little kid, and even the little kid is like talking shit to him. He's just like, you wouldn't be old enough to like enjoy my wine collection. Be like, yeah, I would be while you're in jail, and I'll get old enough and I'll drink all of it. I thought it was just so funny because it kind of points out to what Dom said. Like, Jack is just like such a lame character.
Like, no one respects him, and no one should respect him. Jack is fucking whack. Bro, cut him from the show. Cut him. He's out.
I thought he was just really ballsy though. Wasn't he arrested for like the partial murder? And he comes back with lawyers and the sword. Yeah. He's like carrying a sword with him.
Yeah.
After like being released from, I was like, that's some balls though. You know, like
that's not balls. He's stupid.
Well, let's talk about like what we were saying before, because this is the big one, right? Where Kate's mom is trying to escape and all this other stuff, and then we get the Kingpin reveal. First off, your boy he yeeted that door off the car, bro. It just ripped it off.
It's terrifying. I was like, oh damn, I guess he is that strong.
Yeah, it's like Jesus, man. He was like he clearly been lifting since the Daredevil days. Now this is where we get like really it splits off. Well, first off, I love the ice ring fight in general, where Kate and Clint are kind of just holding off all the tracksuit mafia guys. How'd y'all feel about that? I was having a great time. I was just like, this is great. It's not realistic at all, but I'm having a good time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was pretty good. Like with all the trick arrows going around.
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun. No one had guns. I think they all just kind of charged at them.
No, they had guns, but they had stormtrooper accuracy.
Yeah, it was kind of like, really, like they just came one at a time kind of deal. I was like, okay,
right.
like realistically, they're in like a kill zone here.
Yep,
it should be realistic to kill them, but it was fun. It was really fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a turn your brain off moment for me. I turned my brain off, had a good time, but like that was not. They should have all died there, and that should have been it. Like he should not have. Like Yelena also. Like that was the moment I was convinced Yelena never wanted to kill Clint. If she did, she would have killed him like fucking 3 episodes ago. Like he would have been dead already. I also thought the LARPers and Jack stuff was pretty lame. Personally, just because I was just like, I don't give a fuck about whatever Jack's doing. Like, shut up, bro. Like, who invited you to this party anyway? And then I felt like the LARPers too. Like, I respected it because it's like they're like a part of like law enforcement or something. I think they were firefighters.
It was mix of both fire department as well as
yeah. And so I respected that, but I was just like, can we get back to like the actual action, because like they're not really gonna be doing much anyway. They're just kind of like doing their best, and they're also kind of like nerdy. I don't know. Respect to them, but I wish we could have focused more on like a better fight sequence between in the ice ring. But I feel like we got that when we made it over to the Kingpin and Katie fight. I thought that was fucking lit.
I will also say too, I thought it was so funny when there was that one tracksuit guy. He goes up to Kate like, by the way, your relationship advice really helps. We want to go watch like it wasn't Imagine Dragons, it was someone else.
Bro, that shit pissed me off, bro. These aren't even real characters. Who brought them here?
Maroon 5.
I think like what you said, Donovan, earlier about like you couldn't take the tracksuit mafia seriously. I think that was the point though. Like especially even in the original run, like they beat up Clint a lot, but like they're never like, oh my god, these stone cold killers. They're just like people who keep on saying bro.
They kind of are towards the end. They get a lot more bloody, and like the tone is darker with them because it's like, oh, these guys are actually mafia, but like like they're kind of meant to be the stormtroopers of the show, where they just bring them in. Yeah,
for sure.
What did you think of their costumes? The purple. They finally got the purple.
Oh! What did you think? I loved it.
It's a very like it's the Matt Fraction inspired, right?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it looks like the comic. Yeah.
It's definitely. What did you guys think of like, that reveal?
It was definitely cool, and I think I can see a lot of people liking it. For me, like I'm kind of picky when it comes to live action costumes. I always feel like they look a little like a little cheesy.
Right.
And I thought they looked a little cheesy. Like I feel like Clint's costume looked a little like more cheesy on him because he's older.
Yes.
But like they were definitely well made. I think like they did the best that they could, and I think they adapted it well.
Yeah, I like it because again it shows that Clint is embracing like this whole thing of being a partner with Kate and just like, hey, like I am a hero, like, and this is like where I'm going, so that sort of thing. I like that a lot. But I agree with Ethan in that, like, it did look a little silly. It wasn't like Cap from the first Avengers movie silly, because that was just like it was so much. It looked like he went to Walmart to get that one. But how'd you feel about it, Gabe, as someone who's
like they even joked about it, like ooh, it's breathable from the LARPers and stuff. But like I feel like Hawkeye never really had his own costume or like his own distinct look in any of the movies. Like really. Iron Man had his armor, like Thor has his like regal stuff. But like, if you told me to picture like what does Clint look like as a toy?
He usually,
wears black.
And usually just like what is he? Like, I can't think of anything specific. So I think this is the first time like he has his own specific look to him. It looks okay, but it's very unique. You know, it stands out. Like I'll remember how he looks in that. You know, versus like what he did before. Like, because if you told me to remember like what he was wearing in any of their movies prior to this, I couldn't tell you. Something black. But like this, I remember like he was wearing a purple and black like skin tight jumpsuit or some shit. Like I remember that bodysuit.
Yeah.
So I thought it was just interesting with the branding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Donovan, did you like the costume? What'd you think of the costume reveal?
I liked it. I thought it was fine. I'm not super crazy on the whole costume business, but I think Kate's looked better on her than Clint's looked better on his.
Yes.
Because I think Ethan, you might have mentioned it where like he's just
a little older.
He's just old, you know, in the costume, and so it looked like a little bit like your grandpa trying to like dress up or something. It's like, all right, you kind of hit, but she knows what she's doing better than you do because she actually it looked more badass. She looked cool. But
is there anything else anyone wants to say about like that whole ice ring fight before we get to the Kingpin fight?
Bro, send me to the Kingpin fight.
All I'll say is I did love that scene where like the truck is coming and they hit it with the pin particles. And
You're right.
That
those people fucking died. Where are they?
Right? He's like, I have to ask God about that. I was like, oh, that's funny.
Well, no, but remember the owl came in and took him away. Yo, the owl's about to feast tonight.
Yeah,
they're absolutely dead.
They're fucking dead. We watched them die.
I did think it was cool, and I thought it was cool seeing the trick arrows. What were you gonna say? What'd you say, Gabe? Sorry.
Kind of brutal death.
Oh yeah,
it's a bad way to go.
A good way to go.
Eaten by a giant bird.
Yeah. All right, but Donovan, I know you've been waiting. Tell me how you feel about this Kingpin fight, though.
Bro, the fucking Kingpin fight, dude. That shit was awesome. We just get to like it's been so long. When did Daredevil season 3 come out? Daredevil
2017?
2017. 2018. It was 2018. October 2018 is when it premiered. But like it's been so long since we've had a villain that fucking packs a punch. Like he ain't fucking around, and he's emotionally damaged, and he's just like he's like, I'm gonna kill this fucking person, and then Kate shows up, and he's like, I don't even know you. Like, who invited you here? He just fucking boom, fucking sends her flying.
She goes flying. She gets
yeeted her.
Like when he shoots the arrow and he like grabs the string and then like
her, I was like, clothesline.
Like he doesn't.
What was her plan with that string arrow? It's like, why would you do that?
I don't know.
I don't know, man. Her plan was she lucky she survived.
My favorite is when like he literally gets hit by an arrow point blank and then like hits him in the chest and he just gets angrier. He's just like, I can't believe you just shot me. Like no effect at all.
He was like, wow.
He's like, bitch, I don't even know you. Boom. He's like, jump, beat your ass.
I mean, he breaks all her arrows like all at once. I was like, oh.
Dude, he's so badass. And then he gets hit by a car, gets fucking rammed.
Which how does that work? Like there was I think like
right. It didn't make any logistical sense.
It was like 0 to 60 in like 12 feet.
Like boom. He was stealth attacked by a car. Like I'm sorry, it doesn't work like that. You know?
It was weird.
It was bad. Like first off, even if she was able to move the dead body from the driver's seat to drive the car, I've driven in New York City before. The street is not like big enough for you to do a complete 360 and gain enough speed to go that fast. It doesn't work that way. It was still cool.
Boosted.
Yeah, it was still cool in terms of like him getting hit and him literally like getting up within like 10 seconds sort of thing. Kingpin like the Undertaker in this. But anyway, Gabe and Ethan, anything else you wanted to add about this whole Kingpin fight?
This is brutal. I liked it a lot. It's just very physical, and you're like, ooh, when he punched her, it's like he doesn't give a shit.
Oh yeah,
basic girl. It was good.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah,
no, it was definitely good. I only felt bad that like because obviously it's like it's the Hawkeye show, right? You know, so you can't really he's fighting Kate, but like obviously Kate has to win somehow.
Yeah.
So like she has to come up with this way of just like blowing him up for a bit so that he'll go away for a little bit.
I think we talked about this before. I wasn't a big fan of the ending where like Echo confronts Kingpin It's all like what happened, and then like it shoots him, and it's implied that he died, even though we all know
he's
that
not
he's not
fucking
dead.
dead.
Yeah,
Not
like
dead.
again, to me, it was just whatever sort of thing.
My question is Echo dead? Because like there's no way Kingpin's dead, so I don't know.
Well, Echo's not dead because they already announced a series starring her. So
okay. You don't know that, Adam. Could be flashback.
It could be. You're right.
Here's my question: did they release? Were they always planning on releasing that?
The Echo show?
Probably not.
I don't know.
You know, or was
I think they
like...
probably made that decision like during the filming of the show.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
because she definitely didn't get a huge boon of love after the show came out. Like I didn't see people raving and ranting about.
I do think she did a really good performance for sure. Yes. It's just that the show doesn't really give her a lot to do compared to say like Kate sort of thing. So
yeah, I feel like she's overshadowed a little bit.
Yeah, it's like Adam said. There's a lot going on, and she kind of gets lost in the mix.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's interesting as a character, and I'm curious to see where she'll go. But like in terms of hype level, I'm like, you know, like I'll watch it. But if you told me to like pick like even 2-3 characters I want to see a series from, she wouldn't even make the 3. It'd be like Kate, Clint, and freaking
Kingpin,
Yelena, or Kingpin.
Oh,
exactly. You know, like those are the 3 characters I want to see more of. That I would have chosen over her, to be honest with you. So we'll see. We'll see.
So it all gets resolved. I hate the mom when she was getting arrested. She was like trying to like gaslight.
She was right. Like it really made me mad too. Like she turned.
You say it, bro. I can't even, bro.
She went full bad mom in that moment where she's like, you know, I was just doing this for you. Like you don't know how the world is, Kate. Like this is how it works. People have to do shit like this. And I was like, well, and the way she tried to like guilt her when she was like, is this what heroes do? Arrest their mothers on Christmas? I was like, get out. I was like, you're out of my life. I'm cutting you out. Like, yeah, she like went full tilt in that moment. And I was like, Jesus, lady, like just get out of here.
I was like, this is like the biggest case of gaslighting I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah,
I was like, Kate's not the one who told you to make a deal with Kingpin. What are you talking about? Like, I don't know, bro. I was just like, I don't even care anymore. Like, I thought I cared about you as a character a little bit. Nah, not anymore. Not after that.
I like what she does for Kate as a character, where I feel like it gives Kate's character like more of a conflict because, like we said, like she doesn't have a lot like she doesn't have a lot of struggles. You know what I mean? Like she's a rich kid. She's like doing all right. Like her dad's dead, but like she's doing fine. I think having her like with this mom who's now in jail, I think is like going to be an interesting thing going forward.
Yeah, for sure. Gabe and Donovan, did you both feel the same way about that?
Dude, her mom's fucking worse than Jack. Got her the fuck out of here, man.
Yeah,
for sure.
Like I was saying before, like I forgot there was a whole murder mystery thing, and I was like, all right, let me get to the other parts that I care about.
Yeah. And so we end.
I solved the mystery. The mystery was why the fuck did we even put them in the show? The mystery is for no reason. They suck. Jack is whack. Cut them.
So we get to the end of the show, right? This ending scene where Clint and Kate go back to the family to celebrate Christmas. Very, very wholesome, of course. And the wife is very happy to see him because they also hand over the watch. So at this point, Ethan, explain the watch to me, Gabe, explain the watch. I don't.
No, not me, Gabe. Explain the watch.
Explain it. What is happening here?
So the watch is actually, it proves that her wife was actually in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It shows, if I'm not mistaken, it was like something Moon Lady, something, forget, Nighting Bird.
Mockingbird,
like
you mean?
Mockingbird.
Mockingbird, yeah. Like, I think there's another character playing that in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but like it shows that like she was actually an Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. named Mockingbird or whatever her name is. So like it would have tied her to being like, you know,
part of that world.
Part of that world, exactly.
Okay. Not what I was expecting, but okay.
A little weird.
Yeah, but whatever.
Okay.
But anyway, very wholesome. They all welcome Kate with open arms, which is great.
Everyone's happy.
Everyone's happy.
The dog.
Picked up a few strays.
Pizza Dog is
Yeah.
there. It's all
Yeah.
good. And then they burn the Ronin suit, so that like that symbolic, right, of that chapter of both of their lives, because technically Kate was Ronin for like a day or whatever, and kind of moving on and then being partners, that sort of thing. But overall, I thought it was a good ending. How'd you all feel?
It was good. I liked the post-credit scene where we got to see the play again.
Oh god,
I thought that was nice.
It was hilarious. It's so funny, bro.
So
It's so hammy. Yeah, they went all
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I hated that scene in the beginning in episode 1, but at the end of it all, I was able to laugh at it, and I was like, you know what? Maybe Ant-Man was there. Maybe we're just misremembering it.
Yeah. Maybe.
He was there.
He was in our hearts the whole time.
He was there. He was in our hearts.
He was in here.
In that musical, that's a lot of work.
Oh well, yeah, it is.
Like I was like, wow, they actually like made a production. I was like, that's impressive.
Yeah, it's a proper like set. Yeah.
The real question is, are they gonna make that a real like play that people can go see?
There's definitely somebody in a marketing board like looking and being like, "Do people like that?
Yeah.
People into it? Should we? Like they're definitely like it's on the table somewhere. We'll see."
I think it's.
Hey man, go ahead, Gabe.
The blip, like okay, so the snap or the attack on the original Avengers happened like 10 years prior to this point.
Yeah,
basically.
So they're making a musical. Isn't that too soon? Like what point?
You're right. It's like making it's
like
a little inappropriate.
Like world-changing event.
That's like
that
if we
hundreds of people, like millions of people, whatever. Can you make a
literally like if we had a
it?
musical about 9/11?
Yeah,
like
this is like what?
A little sus, bro. Like what's going on here?
It's like us.
Yeah, they saved the day, but a lot of people died.
It's like COVID the musical. It's like
COVID. Can you imagine 5 years from now, like 6 feet away?
Listen, I'm just gonna lock it in now. I would be first in line to buy a ticket to go see COVID the fucking musical.
The musical.
That sounds amazing. 6 feet away has to be a song.
That's gonna be the first quote at the beginning of this review.
Yeah, I'd be the first in line.
I'm first in line.
So yeah, but yeah, overall ending. Were you guys cool with it? Nothing stood out to you, or?
I liked it a lot. Yeah, you go ahead.
Solid.
All right. Okay. Well, I think the only thing I want to touch on before I kind of throw the floor to all of you to give your thoughts before we get into closing thoughts and kind of ratings. But overall, one thing I do want to point out is that, again, this show points out the trend in Phase 4 about dealing with grief and trauma, right? And we see that in almost every character in the show, right? Yelena is dealing with the death of Natasha. Clint is dealing with the death of Natasha as well. Kate is dealing with the death of her mom, and even Kate's mom is dealing with the death of her husband in some ways, and that's what leads her to the Kingpin. And Echo is also dealing with the death of her father, right? It's like everywhere. It's this really, really big theme in Phase 4, and I think it's interesting that they're really leaning into that. And the other thing I want to point out too, so much of the show, like we said before, is about what Kate and Clint do for each other, right? And how they both are the responsible for the arcs that both of the characters go through. And that's really the best part about the show, is that Clint begins to see himself as a true hero despite what he's done, and he sees the positive impact that he's had on people and is kind of proud of what he's done, and takes up that mantle, and also sees that he can really teach Kate so much, and he sees so much potential in Kate, and we see that as it kind of goes on. And Kate herself is going from this starry-eyed, coming from the ivory tower, like, yeah, everything's great and I'm just going to be a superhero. And she really gets a really big reality check from Clint about what the real world is like, and also what it takes to truly be a hero. And it's a testament to her character that she still wants to be a hero despite all of that. But I think those are the things that stood out to me and that I kind of want to highlight. But for all of you, is there anything else that you wanted to say about the series, or anything that we didn't bring up as we went through the episodes?
I think honestly, just overall, like, I feel like this show is just very consistently fun to watch.
Yeah.
From start to end. I think like it had a little bit of a weak start. But like compared to some of the other Disney Plus shows that I've seen, like this one was definitely the one for me that like was just very, very consistently episode to episode. I was like, yeah, I'm very excited to see what happens next. Like this was cool.
Right.
I'm enjoying the characters, and I didn't want the characters to go. I think that the last show that I felt that way for was Loki. I really enjoyed watching that one. But like all the other shows, like I was just like, yeah, this is cool. Next week comes around, like we'll watch it, see what's going on. But this one was like I was very eager and happy to watch it week to week. So I give it a lot of respect for that.
Yeah, actually, something that you just said kind of like brought something else to my head too. What I love about this show as well is that like Loki, WandaVision, even Falcon and the Winter Soldier, they're like universe spanning, like really really large scale kind of events, right? And Hawkeye, in some ways, is really at least for the MCU, their first ever like street level show, right? Where it's kind of like what we saw in the Netflix series, since those are considered non canon. Where like it is just dealing with these people who are on the streets kind of dealing with crime. And it's not like this like world ending event and all this other stuff. And that's part of why the tone is so so different, is that like, yeah, they're just going on adventures and they're having a good time. The tracksuit mafia says bro every time. Like it doesn't have to always be the stakes are unbelievably high, that sort of thing. Like we can just have a good time and do a show that's a lot more character based instead of all this world building and all this other stuff. But yeah, for Gabe and Ethan, anything else you guys wanted to mention before we get to the end here?
I thought it was really funny. I think it's one of the, in terms of TV shows, it's
Yeah,
probably one of their funniest. Like consistently, there was like their jokes and stuff like that, their banter, like kept it pretty lighthearted. Going ahead with the feeling with the Christmas theme a little bit. Like it's a very nice
right.
Christmassy kind of. And I feel like next Christmas I'll just even now, I'll probably watch it again just because it has a resonating theme of Christmas all throughout.
Right. They even play the songs in the credits too.
Yeah,
like
they play the songs in the credits throughout, like Christmas, like the whole countdown to Christmas. Like I have to make it home. It's very good, cozy. I feel like it's their funniest, and like it really delves into the character a lot. And I think they did him justice.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, Gabe. That it's a comfy show. It's comforting. It's definitely like it's perfectly timed to come out around Christmas. Everybody's home, like watching on Disney Plus. Like they don't want to talk to each other. They'll watch some movie. And I thought, I think it's definitely it's a kind of show that I would watch with like my younger siblings or relatives, and like we would have a good laugh and enjoy it. And I think that it's definitely a niche that is good for the MCU to fill. I think like this kind of like comforting kind of television in a way.
Right.
And I think it was definitely, it was never like I was never like on the edge of my seat gripped, but like I didn't feel like I wasted my time, you know what I mean, watching the show. Like I enjoyed it.
Well, yeah, but what let me ask you, both of you, this, since you've read the comic. Do you think this lives up to the comic? Obviously, it's not the same thing. They take bits and pieces, that sort of thing. Matt Fraction was even brought on as like a consulting producer. But, as people who are fans of the comic, do you think it does it justice? Its inspirations justice in that way?
You can go first, Gabe.
I think it does. Like a lot of the humor, I feel like, has very similar humor. A lot of the jokes or like their conversations, action scenes, and Easter eggs are pulled straight from the comic. And you can tell it's definitely inspired by the comic, which, by the way, they should definitely pay him more for being.
We'll talk about that. I'll talk about that. Don't worry.
Okay.
Don't worry.
It's a little teaser there, but like,
yeah.
I think it does it justice, I think it's a very good, it's very well inspired, So I think it definitely does, and it's a good product, like I don't think this would have been so successful if it didn't have the backbones that the comic laid.
Yes.
True. You're right. The comic laid a lot of the foundation that I think they built off of. It's funny because I went back and like I also reread the comic on a perfectly legal site, and it's funny because like there's comments on the on the site, and they were like, oh boy, I can't wait to watch the show. And like it's because the show is such a different beast, right? And like if you're asking me like does it live up to the comic, like I think that they adapted it the best that they could for the MCU, like in its current state. Like they couldn't just transpose what the comic did,
right?
Because like I keep coming back to it, the comic is such a different tone, and like it's much more like adult, I would say, and like the humor is there, but it's a lot more dry. There's a lot more blood, like things like that.
Yeah.
and like the aesthetic and like the flavor of a lot of the stuff is there, but like there's no the plot is very different.
Yeah.
The plot is very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
So like because like like we say, like they should have paid Matt Fraction and David Aha more.
Yeah.
But like I can almost see why like they weren't like participating in a larger capacity, because like the show is like its own beast in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's trying to do its own thing. But like it is like building on this foundation that the comic laid for it. So like I think that the Hawkeye show stands on its own two legs.
Yeah.
But like I would say that like if you're gonna like the comparisons to the comic like end pretty quickly. So like it's hard to say like that it lives up to it, or that it's like that it's a successor or something like that. I think it's its own thing. Definitely.
Yeah. I think it continues the trend of the MCU, where they take the best like parts and bits and pieces of comics, right? Obviously, the source material for everything, and then they adapt it for the story that they want to tell, or that they can tell, right? Like Civil War in the MCU is very different than Civil War in the comics and that sort of thing. And I think that's true for this show as well. I was going to say this for final ratings, but I'll just say it now. I definitely think that the creators should be compensated more for their work, whether it be Matt Fraction, David Aha.
Sure.
I know Fraction was brought on as consulting producer, but David Aha, Matt Hollingsworth, and as well as the letterer, who I'm forgetting, that it was the hard name to say. But basically, that entire creative team, I think, they should be compensated more. If nothing else, like, we know how much the MCU, how much money they make. Like, they can't throw them
it's a headline every time, right? It's a headline every time. Each movie is like another $1 billion for the mouse, and it's like, they can't throw a few pennies, for the original makers of the comics.
Exactly, and I don't know what the exact like compensation package is for original creators. Like, I think the guy who invented the Winter Soldier probably got like a couple thousand or something like that. But it's like, guys, like, you're making millions, and that's just in the box office, right? Not what about when it comes to merchandise and all the other stuff? Like, you can't throw these guys a bone. I think it's something that I know I feel really strong about in terms of creators' rights, and like, if we're going to be adapting and showing the world these characters and these stories, we should definitely be paying some respect and paying tribute to the guys who kind of laid that foundation. And it's unfortunate, and I don't really know how to solve it, but I certainly think that they deserve their kind of share. And I'll also say this too: if you love this show as well, I can't recommend reading the original Matt Fraction run, as well as David Aha and his team on this character. Right? If
it's
more
very
people,
easy to grab on Amazon. It's great. It's great. It's only like 2 volumes too, so it's great.
Exactly. If more people read that series because of the show, I think that's a success too, and getting them into the comics. I think that's a really, really great pipeline. But that's all I wanted to say before we get to final ratings. Donovan, is there anything you wanted to say before we get to our final ratings?
No, not really. I think it's interesting to hear more about the other side of, the comic perspective, and like how the creators were and weren't involved in the process of this show. But I generally agree with everything. Like, these people put their heart and soul into everything they do. They deserve their, they deserve their mention. They deserve their credit. They deserve their piece of the pie.
Especially when the pie is so big. Yeah, exactly. And not to mention too, like, obviously the show itself is live action, but if you look at the intro and like the opening and closing credits,
it's so heavily inspired. It's a straight up rip, basically. Like there's no mistaking it, because the comic like uses that same like very graphic pop style like all the time in the book. And like it's like in the first 5 seconds they do that intro, and you're like, okay, like clearly like we know that you took all this stuff from the book.
And it's beautiful art. Like, I don't think anyone's arguing that. It's just like, pay respect to David Aha, Matt Fraction.
It tarnishes it a little bit to know that like he wasn't involved more. You know?
Like I think David Aha even tweeted at some point. He was just like, "Yeah, I wish they paid me for like the work or something."
He basically wasn't.
Yeah. So clearly some stuff kind of going on there. But all right, boys. Let's get to our closing thoughts and final ratings. And Gabe, we'll start with you as someone who made their podcast debut.
Rating. So. What are you doing? Rating them 5 or
closing thoughts? Whatever you want to do. However you want to rate.
Thoughts, out of 10, out of 5.
I really liked it a lot. Like I said, Hawkeye's my favorite character. I think the one quote that really sums up this whole series was like the one Kate was talking to Clint. It's like heroes don't. Some guy with this, well, I think a hero isn't just for people who can shoot lasers and fly out of the sky, right? It's only takes one person who's brave enough to do what's right, no matter the cost. And I think that line was why is the real heart of like this series and the character,
right?
And I really, really appreciate that a lot. I think going forward, there's a lot they can do now, right? Like you can just bring in Clint, you can bring in Kate, you can have them a weird bullshit reason where Kate can just show up and Clint doesn't have to because his family, one or the other.
Yeah,
there's a lot they can do here. I think that they opened up a lot with like Daredevil, with like Kingpin, with the Elena, with this Echo series. I think like it opened up a lot of avenues for this whole season 4 thing, and I think that's really, really cool. Rating, I think a solid 8, like a solid 8 out of 10. Not perfect, right? But definitely cozy, definitely good, definitely up there. I think Loki was a little bit better, but I do like just inches it out a little bit. But this is definitely a close second for me.
Okay. Donovan, how about you?
I think a lot of this show for me personally was enjoyed through the interactions with the characters. I think in pretty much every other series besides Loki, like I didn't enjoy the characters' interactions nearly as much. Not to say they were bad. It was just a different level for me of enjoyment, and for that reason, the pretty cool set pieces, the more grounded story. I'm gonna also agree with Gabe. It's gonna get 8 pin particles out of 10 for me. 8 pin particle arrows out of 10.
I love it. I'm
locking it in.
Locking it in. How about you?
Could have did better if they fucking removed Jack.
That's what stopped it from becoming a 9. It's all because of Jack.
Cut his ass.
There you go. To echo, no pun intended, to echo what a lot of you guys are saying, like it was competently made. You know what I mean? It's like the Marvel seal of quality.
Right.
They tend not to miss. They don't always like get a perfect bullseye, but they always get pretty close. And like Gabe said, actually, they can do, like, as far as origin stories go for heroes. Like I think for Kate Bishop, like they could have done far worse, and now they have like a great new character to add to the mix, and I think she definitely adds a lot to the ensemble that they're forming. I look forward to seeing them all, like Shang-Chi and all of them all meet one day.
Yeah.
And just a comfy, nice show. Just a little, I guess, overloaded in the first season, trying to hit a lot of different targets.
Yeah.
Unlike the Hawkeyes, they don't always hit all the targets.
I was about to say, I see what you did there, Ethan. I see what you did there.
Yeah. However, I think overall, like I give it 7 pizza dogs out of 10. That's
okay.
What I give it.
All right.
Yeah.
I like it. I've been thinking a lot about this show ever since I saw it, especially because of the different kind of opinions I've heard online. And I think Loki is by far the best MCU show so far. But in some ways, I think Hawkeye is probably my favorite in terms of, like, I had the most fun watching this show. And I think objectively Loki's better, and even maybe you could make the argument for some other series as being objectively better for all the reasons that we said. I think the biggest problem with Hawkeye is that there's no really, really good antagonist or villain that really opposes our heroes. But also at the same time, to what we said before, there's so many things that get set up and that they just don't quite pay off the way that they should. So it's certainly a show with its flaws. I'll say this too, that the show made me really miss living in New York. And I think that really is a testament to how it knows its location very well. But I just had a lot of fun. It was a really good time, and I'm glad that they adapted some of the best parts of the comic book from the Matt Fraction run. So for me, I give it a full price. It's definitely not. I think objectively it's probably a matinee, but for my own enjoyment, I give it a full price for sure. I had a really good time. And again, if you are a fan of the show, I really encourage you all to read the Matt Fraction run with David Aja, Chris Hollingsworth, and his creative team. It is not that long. It's pretty self-contained, and it's just a great comic book. Really recommend it.
However, if you're like under the age of like 9, maybe you can't read it yet. But otherwise, it's a great comic book.
yeah, definitely. Viewer discretion.
Can I just say, like, and okay, if you're gonna read the comic book, like, skip this part of the podcast, skip like 5 seconds. But one of the people in, because Grills, right? Grills is like a pretty important character. Like we say, he's like our face of of the Loppers.
Yeah.
Grills fucking dies in the comic.
He does.
And I'm like, I'm really worried. I'm really worried about what's gonna happen to him. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna keep him around, but we'll see.
We'll see what they like to take and what they don't take from the comic. But I mean that's all I had to say. I really appreciate all three of you coming on to the podcast and talking about Hawkeye. I had a really good time talking about it. But I guess before we go, any shout outs you want to give, words you want to say to the people? And of course, we'll start with Gabe as someone who made their podcast debut.
Shout outs. I don't know. I guess right now the new Moon Knight trailer just dropped. So shout out to that. I'm going to watch it the second we get off.
Okay. Okay. Anywhere you want the people to follow you?
No. Go get your vaccine.
I like that. No. Yeah, no. Exactly. I like
Go get your vaccine. That's all I got.
Okay.
Get your booster.
Yeah.
Take care of yourselves for sure.
Yeah. I don't want to see you guys. That's probably in very Hawkeye-esque, you know?
Okay. All right, Donovan, any shout outs you want to give, words you want to say to the people? How can they follow you?
Shout out to the East Boys for always holding it down, no matter what. They're always holding it down. Okay. First and foremost. Okay. Secondly, shout out to Clint. Shout out to Kate. They fucking went ham in the show.
Right.
Jeremy Renner's great in real life. I fucking forgot Kate's name already. Haley Steinfeld. She's great in real life. They're great people. Support the fucking artists that make the shows. Get in their piece of the pie. They did the concepts in the comics back in the day. Get in a piece of the pie. But y'all can find me on Twitter at Donovan IDK, DONOVAN IDK. I tweet dumb shit. I don't know. It's probably not worth it. That's it.
Okay. All right. And Ethan, any shout outs you want to give? Words you want to say to the people? How can they follow you?
Oh man. I just want to say, like others, shout out to Matt Fraction and David Aja especially. David Aja's art is a big inspiration for me. I was rereading it and I was like, damn, this shit good. Damn, this good. And yeah, just shout out to them for making a great comic that turned into this eventually. And yeah, just be safe out there, get your vaccine, get boosted, and don't follow me. All right. If you want to follow me, you know what? If you want to follow me, listen to this podcast.
Ooh.
Keep following.
Ooh. Keep following. There you go. Well, there you have it. For me, I just want to give a big shout out to all of you who listen to this podcast or watch this podcast on YouTube. Really appreciate it. All the support. Nothing feels better than talking about the things you love with the people that you love. And if you enjoy this content, please subscribe on whatever platform that you prefer. We're going to be working on getting this onto Apple Podcast. I'm working on it, I promise. But on top of that, similar to what many other people have said, I want to give a big shout out to Matt Fraction, David Aja, Chris Hollingsworth, the colorist. I think he doesn't get enough credit for the color that he added to that comic.
True.
And it's certainly
I had that shout out too.
Yeah,
me too.
Because so much of the art's about the color.
Right. You forget the colorist. Right.
It's all like one creative team is what I'm trying to say. And I really hope that Marvel is able to kind of change their kind of policies when it comes to supporting the creators. Of course, want to give a big shout out to everyone who worked on this. I can't imagine how hard it was considering the pandemic and everything, but y'all really made a good show. Just as everyone else said, take care of yourselves out there. We're in a really tough spot, I think. Please stay healthy and be safe. But other than that, not much else to say. We're going to be doing another review very, very soon. But take care of yourselves and peace.
Peace.